Um, welcome to the show. If you're going to watch this, I'm going to do another review of Time Rabbit video. Naturally, this one was I started listening to this one late last night. I was on my way home. Was listening to it in the car. I didn't really think that I was going to get much from this. I thought it was just going to be one of those kind of Darth drama compilation things where he just kind of starts going off. But he brings up some weird points that I haven't heard from him, and I've been listening to him for a while. So I'm going to start playing this from the beginning, go through it. I've got this sped up to about 1.25 speed. So if anybody watches this after the fact, I don't like going any faster than that in case people have the same preference I do, catching up on these things at about 1.5 speed or 2 speed. And if you do that while someone else is playing the reviewed content too fast, it just loses all convenience. So anyway, get this one started, and naturally I'll be jumping in. Comments are up and running if anybody wants to join in. Other than that, I might open this up later if anybody wants to join me live for a discussion about anything that's going on. After that, I might, I do understand some people don't like to, are uncomfortable jumping on a live stream just to ask questions. In that case, I'll probably post a link to a Discord server that I'm involved in, Rascal's Castle. And that's hosted by a friend of mine. He's been nice enough to actually create a channel for me, so I'll actually post the link information to that if I've got time. So let me post a quick. Get rid of that. Let's see. Hello, Scott Duke. Doing well. Coming over here to us out, or at least stop in for a little bit and see what I got going on and maybe catch up on it later. Either way, it's understandable. Let's see. All right, let's get this playing.
I exercise extreme patience with people who strongly disagree and debate with me.
Revealed himself to me, and then I say, I believe in a fairy, and the reason why I believe in the fairy is because that fairy revealed themselves to me. So then why would that person be more inclined to believe you than me? Would you like to explain that?
Why? Because that's the thing. We don't say random. Because first of all, you're making it up as a.
But how do they know that?
I'm answering you. Do you want an answer? Do you want me to give you a soundbite, or do you want an adult answer? Okay. So what you're doing is you're attempting to defeat the transcendental argument for God by doing a worldview body double. Have you ever heard of that before?
I mean, I understand what your point is. So just
okay. So what you're doing is you're putting on the table a worldview that you don't even believe in as a body double, just like you have body doubles.
A hypothetical.
May I fucking finish and explain something to you to educate you, or else I will server mute you.
Okay.
Now, if you want to giggle like a little schoolgirl, I'll mute you. But being the fact that I'm fucking old enough to be your grandfather, I'm not going to be patient with you being a snot-nosed little punk when I'm trying to educate you. Okay, you got the rules now?
Does Darth believe in the existence of punks other than the snot-nosed variety? Because I don't think he ever says punk without using snot-nosed as a descriptor. Sorry. But the thing that Darth has already, I don't know why he's getting so triggered about this. He actually let something slip a little bit later. I'd only watched about the first half of this before I was just listening to it on the road, kind of casually listening to it. And then as soon as I got back to my place, went to bed. What's interesting here is that he's saying that this guy, he's accusing this guy of trying to insert or use a worldview body double, basically posit an existence for something like, it sounded like that guy was using fairies as an example. But what that Darth doesn't seem to understand is that I think that guy's point was, Darth, if you come to me and you tell me about the existence of your God, and another person comes to me and explains to them their belief in their existence of fairies, what, from each of your viewpoint, what about your viewpoint makes it more likely to be the case than, the case for fairies? But he's trying to say, well, no. What you're trying to do is say that, you're using a worldview body double in this case. He's actually jumping the gun here, because this is one of the things that people will do if they'll say, like, well, let me argue for Allah, or let me argue for Thor, or let me argue for Zeus, or something like that. Seitan Bruggencate used to get enraged by this too when people would do it. He's like, well, do you believe in that God? You couldn't argue it as a hypothetical, was essentially what they were trying to eliminate. You can't argue that as a hypothetical because you don't legitimately believe in it. I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. I've always thought that was kind of flimsy and a little bit of special pleading, but it's something that consistently came up with other pre-suppers, and Darth's dusting it off. But he's going to bring this up again a little bit, and I'm gonna get into a broader point that I thought was weird, because I might be wrong about this. So if I am, I'm open to correction. But we play this a little bit more.
it seems obvious enough that age didn't translate into intelligence in this case.
I was calling that guy.
Have it your way, gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
So you just joined a productive discussion and just completely shut it down.
I don't think you know who that is.
Actually, no. I'm not going to shut the conversation down. But I am going to mute your.
What a joke.
What a joke.
He's a joke because he was trying to tell you something.
There you go, you dumbass. Okay.
You muted the wrong people, man.
Okay. No, I didn't.
Oh, no.
You fucking boomer. Well, not even boomer.
Okay, here we go. You're going to be added to the list.
Let Darth finish.
You cannot even get that command straight. Get your.
There we go. There you go. Shut your big fat trolling mouth, you piece of human garbage. Okay. Now, shall we continue, Dan? Okay. Do you want an educated response, or do you want to sit there and bicker and argue with me and others in here like we're at the lunch table? What's it going to be, Dan Land?
Sorry.
Now, let's start again. What you are doing.
What world? I mean, what kind of childhood did this guy have? Because when he talks about the lunch table, I'm thinking that he's talking about school. Like, where did he come from? I think he's supposed to be originally from New Jersey. So I'm trying to think, like, where did he come from where his lunch table experience was this openly hostile and combative? But if he's from Jersey and he's 60, yeah, okay. You know, maybe a few people pulled some switchblades out on him. Maybe he was the one pulling switchblades out on them. It's anybody's guess. And take a look at this. Isn't Darth's insistence on a hypothetical not having any value unless you genuinely believe it the type of genetic fallacy? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that, but I'll have to give that a thought. But it's weird because I think somebody once tried to bring that up with Cy ten Bruggencate, and he kind of did a flail.
Is putting on the table what is called a worldview body double. Something that you don't even believe in. Listen carefully.
Yep.
Something that you do not believe in whatsoever, that you don't take seriously, nor do we take seriously, in an attempt to avoid the implications of the transcendental argument for God.
Okay. So here's my point. So he's trying to say that this guy's trying to kind of bring in a substitute worldview, right? What is Darth doing then when he asks people, skeptics usually, what they think is ultimate in their worldview? Like he won't accept that they said that there isn't anything ultimate. He'll just, then there's nothing for you. It's game over for you, son. You got nothing. That's his usual, knee slapping, dance law kind of victory declaration. But what he's usually routinely asking people to do is to come up with precisely what he's accusing this guy of doing in advance. Okay, you don't believe in my God as I define it, then what is, okay, but you have to have something ultimate in your worldview. What is it? Give me a substitute. And then when somebody tries to give him a substitute, he stomps on it, right? It's a dishonest question. There isn't one. There isn't anything foundational in my worldview that matches. If I disagree with the definition of what you think is foundational, because remember, that's the only way it could be. Okay, what is that in your worldview? That's not. I still to this day don't understand why he can't see this. It's a stupid question to ask people, because he's basically setting them up for failure. There's no right way that they can answer that in his script. He can get them coming or going. But this worldview body double bullshit that he's lecturing this guy about, it is basically the same thing. It's the same kind of thing. But he's eliciting it in people when he asks his questions. This guy just happened to get to it without getting, without hopping on that part of the track. He's never heard of a devil's advocate. No, because it's of the devil. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is with these guys, but there is a tendency for them to be. They just seem allergic to hypotheticals. If someone tries to argue for the sake of argument, he will accuse them of being contrarian. They're just here to argue. Like, well, yeah, that's sort of the point of argument, right? It's reasonable discourse. But it's not that can't be convincing over time. He seems to think that if you can't create like a complete plot lined up that encompasses all of your set beliefs and it doesn't need to be revised, it's perfect from beginning to end, then you've got no business talking to him. Right. I mean, he gets impatient with people when he asks them questions. He did this with Dr. Josh Bowen when he had a brief exchange with him. He would become impatient when. Now he will let people go on. It's weird. You can hear him getting impatient if somebody takes their time to think about it, and Dr. Bowen did. But then you can hear his tone start to change. That still frustrates him. It doesn't frustrate him as much as somebody coming back at him with a answering his question with a question, right? Which is what he'll accuse them of, even if they're asking a clarifying question. And to the point when Dr. Bowen in his conversation, when he would ask a clarifying question, Darth's fangs would bare. So. This is an interesting observation. I think DD is not the problem, but rather why he is allowed to behave in that manner in Discord and getting away with it. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this before, and I think there's a little bit of... This is definitely not a healthy kind of environment. That he shows up, and then he's given a certain amount of leeway in order to attract a certain amount of people, but I don't know where this occurred. I'm never... well, actually, it's the theist experience. It's looks like it's his channel. Usually when he goes in and somebody gives him a channel, he names it the same thing. It's like the theist experience or something like that. But I'm not sure what server this is on, where he's currently hanging out. But this thing seems to be kind of par for the course for the behavior that he usually will do. I think in this case, and he mentions that the guy that he's grilling right now was one of many that were asking another Christian apologist follow-up questions because this other Christian was presenting kind of a transcendental argument for God. Darth comes in there to basically save the argument, to rescue this guy, and then proceeds to just start, and it'll ramp up here. You'll see it. Yeah, they hate hypotheticals unless they can benefit themselves by doing it. I'm pretty sure Darth has used reductio ad absurdum before, which requires assuming a premise he doesn't believe. Right, and yeah, he does use that. In fact, I think he said that's actually like the sort of central, what he thinks, knockdown punch to his to one of his core arguments. So,
now, are we clear as to what you're doing?
No, we're not clear because I'm not avoiding anything.
Good. Okay, now hold on a second. Good. Yeah. I'll go over it again. Since you're lacking in critical thinking skills. Yeah, I will, or else I'm going to server mute your dumb ass.
Because we don't agree on a point?
Okay, no, it's not because we don't agree. It's because you're being a punk, which is what atheists do. And so you're still here. Now listen carefully. What it appeared to me was that the transcendental argument for God was presented to you. And you said, well, I don't need to accept that because you see, I can invoke another worldview. Okay? Now, you either actually believe in that worldview, or you're lying to us, and you're simply pulling out of your vivid imagination a worldview.
I do not believe in the worldview.
Which is it? Listen to me carefully. Okay. Do I sound like I'm uneducated on this issue?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Perfect answer from both those guys. Yes, he does. I don't know how he's doing this, and I don't know how he supports this claim that you have to believe your position in order to argue it, especially when you're arguing something as touchy as like metaphysics, right? You're going to be dealing with a lot of hypotheticals, a lot of what if scenarios and stuff, and a lot of intangible things. The idea that you better, if I ask you about my God and I'm using the transcendental argument for God, you better have a knockdown defeater for it. Like, the transcendental argument is not a definitive proof for God. It never has been. So this kind of qualifier that he's inserting there is just odd to me. Darth reduced my worldview to absurdity. Yeah, he's done it many times. Shannon asks, quick question. What do you think of Pine Creek's method of handling DD, asking him to talk about Jesus? I mean, it is a diversionary tactic, like Darth said. Pine Creek agrees with that. And basically was like, well, so what if it is? Don't you want to talk about Jesus? I think that's actually kind of important because he, especially now, because Darth has done this thing where several times people have tried to get him to talk about Christianity, to get into, just sort of force the theological components that he believes are necessary for the God he's talking about front and center, and he's not ready to do that yet. He's no. I just want to talk about this thing that is ultimate, right? So I think the notion of trying to draw him out, like, hey, don't you want to talk about Jesus? Dawkins believes in the revelatory God of Christianity, which is Jesus Christ. But when asked about it, he will try to bypass it. And what was interesting is that he was dismissive. The key takeaway I took of it was how dismissive he was of Pine Creek asking him about it, because his assumption was, there's nothing I can tell you that you don't already know. Right. That was telling, because what that means is that Darth is assuming from the jump that Pine Creek knows everything that he can know about Jesus, as much as he can, and comprehend it, and he's just rejecting it. Right. And then when Pine Creek then shifts that and says, no, I want to know what you think about him. I know what I think about him. I want to know what you think about him. And then Darth automatically thinks that this is some kind of dodge or a tactic, which to a degree it is. But I mean, does anybody think, after watching, Doug for a couple of years, do you think that he wouldn't be interested in hearing Darth talk about, like, lay out how he feels about Jesus Christ, like what his personal opinion is about it? Maybe even give like a subjective experience. I think Pine Creek would give him a fair hearing. Darth didn't even bother. So he just, anything that Doug suggested was a dodge. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was inevitable that Darth was going to wrap it up, because Pine Creek was insisting on it. So it wasn't going to go anywhere. As soon as Darth objects to it, then, like, if you bring up something like that and Darth objects to it, you can't bring it up again. If you bring it up again, you're trolling, and then he's going to get rid of you. It's the timer is set. So if he had dodged and then tried to, and then Darth got him back, got him onto his Q&A treadmill, then he would have taken over the stream, which is what he wants to do. He wants to take over the conversation and then bully you rhetorically out of the thing. That little technique, for whatever it's worth, from Doug, it worked. Welcome, Maya. She says there's no way to handle Darth head on. People don't believe the answers he's looking for. Yeah, that's a big problem. He has a huge credibility issue. And I think for some people, maybe even for some Christians, the way he behaved with Doug on Pine Creek, I think was kind of telling. I think that's kind of disturbing. If you're a Christian and you have an individual, even if they're dishonestly asking, you think they might be a little dishonest, a little bit sarcastic, smarmy about, well, tell me about Jesus. You don't take the opportunity to spread the word of Jesus, to share what you know and feel about who you believe to be the world's Lord and Savior. Because what you want to do is you want to score points and you want to win an argument. You want to do that first. Jesus comes second. Darth was a Google Hangouts champ and is currently undefeated in the Discord debate circuit. A true champion. He will go down in history. Okay. Yeah. In his mind, yes, and in the minds of his followers. Tone Loc thinks that he's a titan. Yeah, this is interesting. James Henry, yeah, he says Jack Angstreich has an effective way to address Dawkins. Yeah, Angstreich does have an interesting argument that I'd like to know more about. I've heard a lot about Jack Angstreich. I've never actually talked to him, and I am kind of curious about his take on what is he called, necessitarianism, I think. Something about Darth Dawkins' worldview, and it appeals to me because it was kind of something that kind of occurred to me, but I didn't know if it was grounded in any kind of philosophical discipline or anything. But it's the idea that the way Darth seems to be defining this being, it seems as if it could only create the world around us in the exact way that it did. But then when questioned later, Darth will answer someone about, hey, does 1 + 1 have to equal 2? And his answer is, no, God could make 1 + 1 = 3. That seems a little contradictory compared to some of the other ways he addresses the properties of that God. Chen says, one last thing. I almost cried listening to those poor young girls try to argue about abortion. Yeah, that is a rough video. Yeah, I think if those guys had any self-awareness, they would not do that. But they're the kind of guys that are going to do those kinds of conversations. They're going to be coarse. They're going to be cruel. They're going to be cold. And in their mind, they're totally justified in doing that, because if a young woman comes in there and then admits to have had an abortion, right? And if they're American or from most parts of Europe, most parts of the world, it's legal. right? And as far the one guy actually said in one video where I'm just surprised she would come in here and admit this, as if she's admitting a crime. Amongst a group of Christians, I guess they all kind of think that. So it's just the abortion issue is so fraught with melodrama and lunacy. I actually want to kind of make an argument for, because I've seen a lot of some of these fundamentalist Christians make arguments against vegans. You know, the idea that we can, and I kind of want to make an argument where I kind of compare and contrast the way they trash vegans sort of contradicts with their views on abortion. It'll take some thinking, and it'll probably get me in trouble. But anyway. Let's see. Yeah, James Henry says Dawkins cannot answer Jack's questions. Yeah, that's what I've heard. He can't answer a lot of them. Let's see. Yeah, if God made 1 + 1 = 2, it would be 3 instead of 2. Yeah, there's the weird thing about that one, Thomas. I don't know if you'd seen it, but the way he describes it, that's a quick video. If I get through this one, I might go back to that one. The way that Dawkins describes it, it's as if 1 + 1 could equal 3. I don't know why you think that that's so improbable, because that's exactly the same as 1 + 1 = 2. Darth kind of reveals this idea that the only reason that 1 + 1 = 2 is because God allows it in that exact moment, always has, and maybe always will. That's the regularity that he talks about, but he could change it if he wanted to. So, bonkers. What makes Dawkins an arbiter on any subject? Well, he just helps himself. So I guess he does. He helps himself to Discord servers. He helps himself to their chats. He blows things up. To get back to that previous comment, yeah, every people are to the detriment of their own Discord servers allowing this guy to come in there, because it'll attract some attention and bring some new guests and stuff in. But then Darth turns it into this, just toxic dump. Well, there's no regularity. Yeah, that's part of the problem. I should play that one for you, because I think that one would probably, for you, Thomas, fire some dopamine in you. That'd get you going. All right, let's get back to this.
Okay, you can fuck off.
Whoa.
Thanks, Thomas.
There we go. See, this is what we're dealing with, okay? They will pretend to be intellectual, but then when you try to intellectually explain to them why they're wrong, they resort to trolling, heckling, catcalling. Okay, that's simple. Right? And then when they get server muted, they continue to troll and lie that they're being muted for censorship purposes rather than that they're being trolls. You see, this is the mentality of people that we're dealing with on the interweb. Okay? So what he's doing is he's responding to the transcendental argument for God by positing a fairy. Okay? But this is not something that he actually believes in.
See, and that part was a little bit cut up. I don't think he's positing a fairy. I think in his case, that sounded like, because we were kind of catching part of the end of it, I think it sounded like he was comparing two different claims. Darth shows up and says, "Hey, you want to hear about my God?" And another person comes in and says, "Hey, let's talk about fairies," which I happen to know for a fact are real. How can I evaluate them? And now Darth is like, well, he's trying to shoehorn the kingdom of the Fae in here in replacement for my God. That's not exactly what was going on, but Dede's on a tear and he will not be stopped. Let's take a look here. Could you not say, since the Christian God is all powerful, what's stopping him changing the universe at any moment for the greater good? And if Dede says, why would he? Reply, who is he to question God? Yeah, but then it becomes like this. This is something that Jay Gardner brought up, because when he asked about, because Darth does this kind of thing where he's like, is it possible for me to jump to the moon? And Gardner asked him, what do you mean? Are we talking about metaphysical impossibility, physical impossibility, whatever? And then he's like, is it physically possible for me to jump? He's like, oh, physically possible? No, because the law of physics would prevent you from breaking Earth's orbit under your own power, right? And then surviving the vacuum of space and safely landing on the moon. Although maybe surviving the trip to the moon wasn't part of Dede's plan, just jumping to the moon. Anyway, the idea that Darth seems to think that impossibility and he kind of conflates the notions of it's impossible to do it because it violates some kind of rule. It violates something in place in kind of a natural order versus something that has been prohibited from you, right? And I would ask this, like, well, do you think it's possible for me to jump to the moon? I would ask him, do you think God could allow you to? Could your God make it possible for you, and just you, at one point in time, allow you to jump to the moon? And if he says yes, then the regularity that he's talking about isn't real. But again, he tends to say things like God instantiates and secures the universe, right? So any regular, I really think that he believes this. I think he believes that everything that happens, the only reason it's regular is because God operates in some kind of regular way, but he can violate that regularity at any time, which basically means that the only reason why, if you hold out a pen and drop it and it lands on the floor, it's because that's God's preferred orderly mechanism for that particular thing. But he can change it at any time that he wants. I mean, he's done this before. He told somebody at one time that he doesn't believe the past exists. So yeah, Didi's got. I think there's actually a lot more banging around in that crazy head of his that that could probably be pulled out and philosophically tortured. This is a good point. Yeah. I still laugh at him thinking he's in demand by PhDs when it's just Canadian Catholics scamming them into talking to him. That's a good point, because when you hear him talk, he's like, well, if I'm so crazy, if I'm so horrible, why is it these PhDs are lining up to talk to me? Like, those PhDs are being introduced to you at the time. They're not seeking you out. They're basically doing CC a favor. They're doing something kind of educational. They're showing up there, and the Canadian Catholic is like, by the way, I've got this interesting fellow with a unique epistemology that would like to talk to you. And then he, they let him loose, and then that, the fucking gargoyle, flaps around for a while until the PhD gets frustrated. And you can tell this happens every time. I mentioned this before, and I remember watching a Tom Rabbittt video where he was showing him and his crew reacting to what I was saying. You can tell that Canadian Catholic is he's very self-conscious of the whole thing, because he's like, he's watching them to gauge their reaction, because he doesn't want to piss them off. It's one thing for it to be entertaining, but he doesn't want to alienate them from his channel forever. So this is good for a little bit, but he's like, okay, do you want to go on? I want to gauge your feelings here, because I don't want you comparing me to this guy. It's just, I know this dude from, the Discord basement, and he really wants to talk to you. And usually the thing is, Dawkins doesn't really want to talk to that person. Like, does he know what Jay Gardner works on? Does he know his studies? No. He just knows he's an atheist, and he knows PhDs after his name. So Dawkins is going to go there and try to mushroom stamp him. Sorry, children. Anyway. All right.
He's not taking this alternative view seriously. This is just simply a clown show worldview body double that he's presenting in order to escape the exclusivity of the transcendental argument for God.
Which is something that Dawkins asks for. Didi asks people to, basically puts them in a position where they need to put this up or shut up, right? If he was honest in his questions, and he would just tell people, like other preceptors have done, like, look, there has to be this foundational ultimate thing. It's this God as I define it. And the reason that you and I are able to have rational discourse, you might epistemologically deny it, but ontologically, I'm telling you it's there. Simple enough. But Darth Darth doesn't make clean distinctions between epistemology and ontology. He tends to think that at least he seems that he doesn't understand this. I know he doesn't understand this because it's been asked of him multiple times, and he gives weird answers to it. But he seems to think that the only way that you could know something, right, or believe something, is if it happens to actually be the case, right? The idea that I am a skeptic. I don't know if God's real, and I'm a sinner in his worldview, but I know that the sky is blue. He can't disagree with me on that, right? We're both standing under the same sky. It's the color blue. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. Okay, but I don't agree with you on the existence of this God, right? It doesn't follow that, but what he'll tell me is that, or tell anyone, it's necessary for you to reference God when you assert that fact which references God. That's the part that doesn't make any sense. No, if his worldview is correct, and I say that the sky is blue, if it's grounded in God, that applies to us both. The ontology, he's right about the ontology. Epistemologically, I'm wrong. And the fact that he doesn't seem to get that, or seems to want to insist that, no, but you not only is the ontology, you have to, yes, ideally, what I think I know, what I believe, should conform to the actual state of affairs, but it may not. Let me get back to another question here before I push on. Sean Morris, isn't the main problem with Darth's apologetic is that knowledge isn't based off a single fact, but a set of criteria, sense perception / reason? Yeah, I think that's a good question, because he seems to think that if a fact isn't grounded, then you end up running into other problems. So you know, any fact that you have is supported by other facts that you have. Somebody once described this to me as like it is in language. I think it was actually a comment in one of my videos or one of Time Rabbitt's, where, you know, you use other words to define the word that you're honing in on. How, you know, how do you define belief? Well, you use other words to define it. You almost can't escape that. You wouldn't say that there's some, you know, you could say that that's somehow circular, that you don't have some ultimate stopping point. But that's the way language works. What's being described here, I think, in what Dawkins seems to have a problem with, is that what we're experiencing in terms of these, you know, this infinitism might not be the actual state of affairs, but it might be the way our brains work. It might be a side effect of how our epistemology is formed. It's describing how we think. It's not the actual state of affairs. I think he has a hard time squaring that with other concepts he's equated with. Let's see. Yeah, welcome, Wild Eden. Yeah, I'm trying to put out some more content because I've been gone for a while. Let's see, what's this? Laura, you should check out debate. Darth, PhD student, perspective philosophy, good for future review. Need wrench if you need link. Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me. I thought I'd made you a mod, Laura. Sorry about that. There we go. And Eden, I need to make you one too, in case Smokey or although I guess it doesn't matter now. My brother was telling me that that's not entirely the case, but I'll give you a mod there. All right, let's get back into this.
Okay. Now, does anybody who's not a troll in here have any questions, agreements, or adult objections? I'll be glad to take them.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh shit, I'm scared to say it because you're really scary. I don't know, but why were you screaming?
Oh, well, hold on a second. Wow, I'm so scary. I'm so scary. Then if I'm so scary, why don't you leave?
That to me is funny. I don't know how many of you picked up on this, but I kind of get that Varuna or Varuna, however her name is pronounced. I've never seen her before. This is the first time I ran across her. I took that to be kind of playful, like she's just saying that in jest. And then, yeah, Captain Literal here has got to step in and be like, "Oh, well, if you're so scared, why don't you go?" Like, yeah, you're a hit with the ladies there. Like 60 years old and taking everything fucking literally. Whew. Lord. James Henry says, yeah, screaming is scary. It is, especially from this guy, because it's like O'Reilly. It's like Bill O'Reilly. Fuck it, we'll do it live. He loses his shit just like Bill O'Reilly, and his voice kind of sounds like Bill O'Reilly, which is probably why he annoys me so much. Like, I can only listen to him for about maybe 30 to 40 minutes each day. That's as much content as I can, because then, you know, I'm not prone to headaches, but I am when I listen to this guy's voice. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. Tyler West says, Darth needs to tell us what the ultimate is made of. Is it energy, radiation, waves, a field? Yeah, he's going to reject that one. Plus, he's not going to, just like he regenerates, or he rejects the idea that when someone asks, how does revelation work? Right? He doesn't have a problem like skipping back and forth between why isn't there a God, or how is it the case that there is no God, or how isn't a God possible, or why are you an atheist? He just sort of blends all those together. When he asks, how is it that there is no God, he's asking kind of a mechanistic question. But if you ask it, how does revelation work? By what mechanism is that functioning? He's as limp as seaweed. He's got nothing. Like, well, just it, you know, he starts talking like that. Or he shifts the topic, right? Like, you don't, like, if you have to ask that question, then you can't understand revelation. The reason that you can't understand it is because you're unrepentant, right? Or he'll say that revelation is somehow dependent on repentance. I think he once tried to say that, which was odd, because I kind of thought that the effect of revelation would elicit repentance. again, those are theological things that I think Darth Dawkins should probably talk more about. I think if more theologically minded skeptics kind of go after this guy, he will fold faster. Like the only thing he's got is this sort of presuppologetic, grounded in his weird ontological argument. But Darth has a very punchable voice. Agreed. I wonder if there's a German word for that.
Because I want to listen, but you're over here screaming at people.
I guess you're really not scared then, are you?
I mean, I'm scared of the fact that you're screaming at people and server meeting them because they have different opinions.
You're scared because somebody's raising their voice.
Because they have different opinions.
Okay, again,
but then you want to over here say, "Oh, I'm an all person to be a graphic." But what the fuck are you doing on Discord?
There we go.
What are you doing on Discord then? If you have no patience whatsoever, what the fuck are you doing on
Discord?
Darth. Hold on a second. Now you're server muted. And the reason why you're server muted is not because you were making a legitimate adult complaint, but you too want to heckle and troll and be a motor mouth rather than discuss it. You first go, "Oh, I'm scared. I'm scared." Well, then why were you running off at your mouth with machine?
Darth, she was not being literal. So you are a dork.
Done talking and accusations if you're so scared. You see, you are a lying piece of garbage. Okay?
Darth,
I agree.
Yes.
you are such a boomer.
Oh, wow.
Anyone else?
I mean, do you have anything
That guy
actually
just gets
to say to
booted just
Darth
like
other
that.
than he's a boomer? And
You see,
literally
I'm actually trying to come to the aid of somebody else because I understand the transcendental argument for God. That
Darth Dawkins, who is a consistent critic of atheists defending other atheists, quote unquote, white knighting for them, is white knighting for, I think, the guy that just popped up on screen. He's white knighting for him. That's interesting. I guess the same rules don't apply to Darth.
he does. Not that his presentation was all that bad because I came in late. But the point is, this is what we're dealing with. They pretend like they have intellectual objections, but they really don't. This is all a
high praise from Darth. He's like, well, the guy wasn't all that bad. Wasn't all that bad. But now these atheists are going in on him. So it's time to get rid of them. Like, so it's not about their objections. It's about the identity of the people asking this guy follow-up questions. That's the problem. Oh, they're all trolls and liars and what was his favorite? Snot-nosed punks. Snot-nosed.
A farce. Because then when a grown-up shows up, right, and tries to explain, then one of them starts trolling. Then another one jumps in. You see, birds of a feather flock together.
I see no grown-ups here, except for maybe Verona. She was kind of cool. And that guy with, like, I think a French accent that was calling him a boomer. That was refreshing.
Okay? Nobody was muted in here for disagreeing. People were muted because they were trolling. Okay? And if you want to bitch and you want to whine and say, "Oh, you're muted because you don't disagree," good. Go on with your little silly little charade. Okay?
So would I, because I'm pretty sure it's not. My idea is that Darth thinks that trolling is people disagreeing with him just to disagree with them, or just anybody that he disagrees with. He doesn't seem to understand that trolling is what a lot of his kind of chucklefuck sycophants do in his channel. It's like, I'm going to go on and make comments or whatever and elicit reactions just to do it. A lot of people with ADHD engage in trolling. It's a thing. Not to say that they all do. I'm not trying to rope a group of people or demonize a particular mental health issue, but there are a lot of people who probably aren't responsibly dealing with their ADHD, who instead use social media as a way to goad people into dysfunctional attention seeking.
I don't care.
I agree with Darth.
Everybody who got server muted was because they're heckling, trolling, and catcalling.
We've been speaking with them for over 3 hours now, and it just...
I think only one God was the guy that was actually presenting the transcendental argument. This is the guy that Darth needed a white knight for. So I'll point out, so they're heckling, trolling, catcalling. Keep in mind, if he blows up at somebody after asking, they ask a question, he blows up at him and they giggle uncomfortably, he considers that heckling. But the same reason people are curious to hear Darth's definition of trolling, I want to hear his definition of catcalling. Like, Are they also wolf whistling at you, Darth? Like
every time we've refuted their claim, they just bring up a new hypothetical, and that's all they were doing was operating.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Okay? When they said, "Well, we could just have some fairy." Well, is this fairy? Does he actually believe in this? Well, nobody takes him seriously. Okay? All he's simply trying to do is introduce. Very good. Now you're serving it.
Well, their thesis is that this is something that was made up, and so we could just make up something else. So they're trying to see the limits.
No, this is the adolescent. This is the adolescent thinking that when the revelation of God is presented, okay, because they've decided that they believe that God doesn't exist. Therefore, all that they have to do to counter that is just invoke some imaginary being, right? That they don't even believe it exists, and say, see, I can do that too. That's not an adult response, okay? It doesn't matter that you think that the God that we present is fiction, right?
That is correct.
It doesn't matter. Now, if you want to step up to the plate and attempt to offer a rebuttal that the God that we present is fiction, we'd love
everyone moron.
Present is fiction, right?
That is correct.
That they don't even believe it exists, and say, see, I can do that too. That's not an adult response.
So why is a hypothetical not an adult response? Since when?
It doesn't matter that you think that the God that we present is fiction, right?
That is correct.
It doesn't matter. Now, if you want to...
I don't understand what he means by that. It doesn't matter for your argument, or it doesn't matter in reality? Because that's not the point of presenting the opposite, right? These guys just... This is always infuriating to me, because presuppositional apologetics works great for Islam. If you bring it up, the only thing that they bring up is that usually the standard response is that there are parts of the Quran that acknowledge Christianity and acknowledge the Bible, quote unquote, the Bible, the scriptures. So therefore, it's somehow, as a religion, it's subordinate to Christianity, which makes no sense, because by that standard, if you're looking at the New Testament, it's obviously acknowledging the Hebrew Bible. Wouldn't you say it's subordinate to Judaism and therefore just a kind of fan fiction? We may never hear a thoughtful answer from some of these guys about that. Children don't respond in hypotheticals. He's just saying shit now. Yeah, I think he is. This is a good question, Scott. Was Bertrand Russell a child because of his teapot analogy? Well, Bertrand Russell was probably possessed by Pazuzu or something like that, or Azazel, some demon, according to Dawkins.
Step up to the plate and attempt to offer a rebuttal that the God that we present is fiction. We'd love
everyone moron.
Okay.
Because Darth, can I just say something?
Yes.
What they are doing is that they are making hypothetical questions about God, when our topic in here is that we have to establish first if there is a God or not. So it's false, or it's a fallacy for them to make those hypothetical questions, because we did not even, or they did not even disprove that the existence of God is false. Is that correct?
No, yeah, that's correct. What they're doing, as I said, he's introducing what we call is a worldview body double, right? But it's not something they even believe in.
These guys are really confused about this. Like, and this starts with the fact that they mischaracterized, I think, the person at the beginning of this video, when he was trying to basically say, how do I go about evaluating the claims from different people? And maybe Didi can answer this too. Like, if you show up and tell me that it's necessary for me to believe in the existence of the being of the deity that you define, if someone from the Muslim faith comes up and presents a very similar argument for Allah, how do I make a distinction between the two? Now, in that case, I'm not presenting some kind of invented hypothetical. It's apples and oranges at that point, right? But they're two similar claims, religious claims about an ultimate creator being. I'm like I said, I know how Seitan Bergenkate had dealt with this in the past. Was always to point out that the Quran references the Bible and is therefore subservient. I think Dawkins has done it too. DD has done it too. But yeah, this is such a weird idea. It's like, well, no. I don't want to deal with your hypothetical. What we need to deal with is whether or not this God is false. The problem with this is that it's a slightly different. There's a slightly different emphasis on proof there. if you're making a claim that this thing exists, right? The idea is, I've presented you with an idea about a God. You need to tell me that it's you need to disprove it. Okay. And then I start asking you questions about, okay, why do you think this is the case? Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think this? And you start giving me those reasons. And then I start seeing a pattern here that's very similar to the person that came up to me and said, hey, you know what? I believe fairy folk are real. Prove me wrong. Right? Like, I don't think that Dee and company would accept somebody who showed up and said, well, actually, the Fae do exist. They've revealed themselves to me. You need to tell me how that's not possible. Dee can only appeal to rhetoric. I know he hates this, but rhetorical flourishes. He can only appeal to what he thinks is a rhetorically sound argument of a foundational ultimate thing that has to ground all of reality. And so he'll end up using something of an external critique. He'll just take his worldview and say, your worldview must match mine, and the Fae folk don't fit. He's not really arguing with them at that point. I mean, he's trying, but he's not really, I mean, he won't make a lot of sense. He usually doesn't. Hey, Clockwork Rex, and welcome, JC Knott.
All right. So the point is simply this, is if they reject that what is ultimate, what is the reason why anything at all exists, if they reject that it is a mind, a personal being that we call God, then they need to make their case as to why they reject that. Merely saying you're...
A lot of people have, but Dee has not done a good job in helping in making this clear to people, because oftentimes what he will do, he will ask what they think. And again, I do think that it's a dishonest. If he's not being dishonest, if his intentions aren't dishonest in the way he's asking the question, the way it's worded ultimately ends up being dishonest, because there's not a good way to answer. It's a bad question. It's poorly formed. Like, he wants to know what they think is ultimate in their worldview. It's only until after. So say somebody comes up with something that doesn't imply a mind, like reality or existence, then he'll, oh yeah, by the way, the foundational ultimate thing needs to be a mind. Like, well, that wasn't the case before. You asked me what in my worldview was ultimate, and I'm telling you it's existence itself, or reality as a whole. Nope. Got to be a mind too. You left that part out. You kind of buried the lead there. And now when he's asking this, he's like, okay, well, you need to explain to me, if you think that there's something ultimate, how do you explain that it isn't a mind? Well, the problem that he's run into with so many of the PhDs that he's talked to is he doesn't get to that point. Like, he gets confused. They're pushing back on the notion of an ultimate. Whether it's a mind or not is kind of irrelevant to them. They're just pushing back on the notion of an ultimate, this ultimate kind of thing, because as Dr. J. Gardner put it, like, Dee is kind of insisting on the insertion of a fifth wheel into the whole thing that doesn't really have any explanatory power. And I think he's right. That doesn't have any explanatory power. Dee just insists that it does, but he can't back it up and he can't make the connections. Yeah, Odin says Floyd FP did a great job versus Dee. Yeah, that's pretty old. If anybody can, if you find just do a search for Floyd FP. He's had several conversations with Dee, and he does a really good job with it. And I think there's some pretty good examples in there, because Floyd is very good about keeping the distinctions between internal critiques and external critiques. You know, he emphasizes that distinction. I don't know if he always catches Dee doing it, because Dee is pretty sloppy about it. He'll just kind of slide back into it. But yeah, no, he's Floyd FP did do a good job, and I think he's permanently on Darth Dawkins' troll list. So yeah, this is an interesting question from I think it's Dan Britson. Thomas Jefferson Bible had all supernatural claims cut out. How would Dee qualify him? Yeah, I asked I think a Christian what they would think if I told them that I was a Christian, but the only Bible I would read was the Thomas Jefferson version. Or I asked a Christian what they would think if that was the kind of, if they were presented with that kind of Christian. But I don't know how productive that discussion would be, to be honest. All right.
unconvinced, all it simply is a testimony of your personal psychology. It is not actually a refutation or a rebuttal. Okay.
You want to mute everyone now, dude?
Of the proposition.
The weird thing is the refutation and rebuttal. There are lots of refutations and rebuttals to his arguments. The problem is that he's inconsistent about what he wants. Like somebody can see his argument and try to give an internal critique, and Darth comes up over the top rope and asks them for an external worldview. He wants to know what their equivalent is, and he's insisting that they have to accept his notion of foundationalism, and they have to have an equivalent ultimate that is also a mind, and then tack a name onto it, and then argue for it. Like, I want you to argue the same thing I'm arguing. Otherwise, I don't have to listen to you, because if you don't have this thing that doesn't have any explanatory power that I've shoehorned into a worldview, well, then I don't have to talk to you, because clearly you haven't experienced revelation. That's essentially what he's doing. You've made bad choices, and you need to repent. Once you repent, maybe you'll figure out where I am.
That they think it's ridiculous by trying to ridicule it and offer something ridiculous, but they're not really trying to get at the truth. There's a subtle difference between trying to actually get at the truth and saying, I'm just going to post some ridiculous hypothetical because I think the notion is ridiculous. Those are two separate things.
Well, on top of that, if you were here earlier, they actually acknowledge that they have no defining truth, that they could be wrong. So
that doesn't mean that there isn't a defining truth. It just means that you can accept things as being provisionally true. You can amend things. This is true to the best of our knowledge. I don't understand why these guys have this. Like, true and false have to be absolute, in the sense that you not only are they are certainties, but they feel 100% certain about them. This is another thing that I see with a lot of preceptors, especially the younger guys that haven't thought about this. They equate their feelings of certainty with a notion of certitude, blend those two things together, and then act as if truth, capital T, has to conform to that. It has to make me feel 100% certainty, 100% certain, and it has to be, without a doubt, a certitude, unequivocally true.
They adhere to nothing.
And so now you see them kind of pivoting. If it's not that, then anything the opposite of that is nothing. You don't believe in anything. That's not true. They didn't say that. They do believe in provisional truth, inductive logic, probabilistic truths, these kinds of things. These guys don't accept it because they, for whatever reason, they think that philosophically this falls short, which they don't do a good job of explaining why that is the case. The fact that you could believe something, collectively humanity can think that a certain thing is the truth, and then we get additional information, or we're exposed to new information, and we shift that a little bit. It doesn't necessarily, like these guys seem to think like, no, it completely overturns it, and it makes what we previously knew totally irrelevant. Now we've got this new thing. It turns out it's exactly the opposite. We thought it was good, then it became bad. That's not usually what happens. Usually it's like we had most of it right, or we had some of it right, and then we get more information, and then we fine tune it a little bit more, and a little bit more as time goes on. That's what we tend to see. These guys make it this all or nothing game, and it's just I think this kind of betrays a psychological tendency that they have, and a neediness that they have. They need it to be grounded by some kind of final arbiter as being exactly the case, without question, without doubt. And if they're insisting on they can have that because they believe in an omniscient being, you can simply challenge them and say, you can't verify what an omniscient being is in your human state. The only way you'll know that if you're right and you go to heaven and then you become an omniscient being, or you have access to that somehow or another, you can verify it, then you might know. But right now, in the here and now, you're just like any other sinner. And anybody could say that they're omniscient, and you'd have no way of being able to verify whether that was actual certainty or not.
To show you that I'm not a hard-hearted man, I am going to remove all of the server mutes. But if even one of you starts up again, then everybody who is server muted right now will be re-server muted with just one command.
That's fair, right? I mean, so he goes on a mute blast, mutes all these people, and now graciously, Emperor Darth Dawkins will bring them back, will allow them to speak. But if one of their ilk raises his hackles, all of you shall be cast into the fire. Sound familiar? Kind of sounds like Darth's God.
Okay, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. If you want to have a conversation, if you want to have a disagreement about how we're wrong.
I agree with you there, James Henry. This is some North Korean style fundamentalist Christianity right here.
Wrong, we'll be more than happy to humor you. But if you're going to behave like little children, then you're going to be red dotted.
Thank you, Bob.
Darth, I think I have a suggestion. I think we should make some rules in here, like give them both position, give 5 minutes of presenting their position.
Oh, we don't need to set that. They need to act like adults. Right?
So Rupert's like, hey, why don't you give them 5 minutes to present themselves? And Darth's like, no, they have to act like quote unquote adults. I would like to see that from Dee, right? If you've got somebody, this full tilt diva brings out this standard, all y'all that were muted will go right back to all being muted if one of you upsets me. That's not adult behavior, right? That's the bully in the sandbox.
Now, Damland, do you believe in God?
I think you've changed my mind. I think I believe in God now.
Okay, if you're going to be sarcastic, listen to me.
I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay,
I'm actually serious.
Okay, so why do you believe in God now? How did that happen?
I think he just revealed himself to me right now.
Okay, so you're being sarcastic. Did I tell you not to troll? Now everybody's now serving me.
Okay, that right there is, I think, just a different way of doing what Pine Creek did. Like, he's acknowledging it. Now, let's say that guy, let's say that he's Darth right, and he's just doing that to be sarcastic. He's just, I think he just muted me, or he just revealed himself to me right now. Why is Darth skeptical of that? Why is Darth skeptical of revelation in his own discourse, in his own discussions with skeptics? Does he not believe in the convincing power of the message that he's bringing out there? So when somebody does say, you know what, I find this compelling. I think God has revealed himself to me right now. Nope, that's not the right language. Right? So if he's keying in on this, and I'm not trying to be too too sleazy about this. What would it take for someone who irritated Darth as a skeptic? What would they have to say? Not even what would they have to say. How would they have to present themselves to convince Darth that they actually converted? I mean, think about that. Does anyone think that he believes in genuine conversion at this point? He clearly doesn't. He just muted this guy. No, you're trolling. He just made that decision and blasted him. I bet you anything that the only defense that Darth has is that the Holy Spirit guides him in those decisions. In which case you can then ask him, how does the Holy Spirit work? He can't tell you.
I have a question.
Okay, you see, I take away the
fucking moron.
No, actually, I'm not. You see, I'm actually the grown-up in the room, and I don't put up with bullshit.
No, he's not. You're just old, right? You're just a child grown older. That's it. You're not mature. Stop insisting that that's the case, right? That's just ageism and nonsense. No one has to kiss your ass, your dimpled, wrinkly ass, because you're old. Like, yes, you could be you're old enough to be many of these people's grandfather. You're probably a shitty grandfather. Stop holding on to this idea that with age comes wisdom. You are a living example that is not the case.
Trolling, okay? Now, I gave the warning, no trolling, okay? So what he wanted to do was he wanted to do some more.
This is a good point. So Scott just said there are salvation tropes that fundies sort of expect people to follow in their salvation testimonies. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to my question. What would it take for Dee to believe a former skeptic that he has tangled with before in the past? What would it take for him to become convinced that that person was being genuine? What would they have to say, and how would they have to say it to convince him? Because he was quick on the gun with this guy, and you'd think that if this is a Christian who is concerned with salvation, that he would be willing to hear that out, but he's not. Right? This is about preserving. He doesn't want this person trolling him. that person has to go away, because this is not about Jesus, and it's not about God. It's not about the Bible, the Holy Spirit, the Great Commission. It's about Darth Dawkins being right on the internet, because he's older than all of you, and he is the adult in the room. And damn it, he is going to tell you how things work. You need to shut up and let him educate you. And if you've got questions, he doesn't care. Ask him. But you only get one or two before he's convinced you're a troll and then damns you to hell.
More trolling. So everybody gets punished.
I know the reason why they are behaving like that. Because since they do not believe in God, there's no guiding of their behavior.
You're absolutely right. And in the 20th century, this is why people like Hitler, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh killed unimaginable millions. Big J, if you heckle again, I'm going to add you to the server mute list.
Okay, then do it, Grandpa.
Okay, all right.
And do it, Grandpa. A bit childish, but well played. Yeah, I like he's bringing up these dictators and stuff. You mean the people whose leadership and management styles you emulate on social media?
Wow.
This is in part. It's not the entire reason, but this is in part the why they behave the way they do, because they don't care. And what you will see is, even in more formal situations, the atheists, because they have teenager mentalities, they'll just make up crap. They will spew out anything as long as they think that they're dodging, delaying, obfuscating.
I think the teenager mentality that he accuses skeptics of having is that a lot of the people that he talks to, whether it's well developed or not, have a sense of humor, and he doesn't. Because, like, I mean, I've heard him talk about some of the things that he likes and stuff, and it's pretty cringy. I think he just wants to be accepted by his fellow man, but knows he won't. So he can just wield his knowledge of God over them. And you know what? When we die and go to heaven, everyone will realize that Darth was right. Should have listened to Darth. I didn't get a chance to talk to him because I made his troll list, and he refused to talk to me and stop spreading the word of Jesus to me, the word of the Lord. Will God judge Darth Dawkins for violating the Great Commission because of this country club exclusivity he brings to his? I'm sure he's got a way of justifying it, but yeah, this is a good question. If this is how Jesus guides, is this how Jesus guides behavior? The people he's muting are better behaved than he is. Yeah, he doesn't think so. He gets to engage in the genetic fallacy because those points are coming from, once he's asked them if they're an atheist or a skeptic and they've given that answer, the genetic fallacy doesn't apply to Darth Dawkins. He doesn't have to accept anything that they're talking about, because the two central components of presuppositionalism are to believe that the central fact is that everybody knows that there's a God, the Christian God. It's just that some people have denied that truth and suppressed the truth and righteousness. So Darth can then go to point two, which is to assume a hostile audience that is either, depending on his theological views or maybe his mood, they're blinkered in their sin, they're being deliberately misled by Satan, or they are willfully suppressing it themselves, in which case they are intentional liars and deceivers themselves. Either way, he treats them as if it's their fault. It doesn't matter which theological take that you have. Once he knows that you're a skeptic or unconvinced, you're an atheist. Atheist equals liar. So,
Prevaricating, misdirecting. Okay, they don't care what they say, as long as they can stall, dodge, delay, and stalemate the conversation. For them, they consider that victory. They make a pretense that they're here to intelligently debate as adults, but they're.
That's a good point. Think about how stupid it is to demand maturity on Discord. The average age is like 13. Also, his name is a play on Star Wars. Such a clown. Yeah, and it was what somebody came up with jokingly, and then he took it. What was funny is that he actually thought initially, because he used to go by the username Evolution False, and he was telling somebody, he's like, well, I think it's funny because every time they say my name, what they're actually saying is that their religion is untrue. Evolution's false. Get it? And I'm like, okay, so if I named myself Christianity Crazy, would you give me a pat on the back for my cleverness? I don't think so, DD. Yeah, so he's never really had a username. he's always been some take on this. And I think he thinks that if people call him Darth Dawkins, this is vilifying our hero, our collective hero, Richard Dawkins, which if he paid attention for even half a second, there's a lot of atheists that are not fans of Richard Dawkins, have issues with him for many reasons. See here. Central to Didi's argument is that whether or not God exists is a dichotomy, and therefore opinions about God's existence must also be dichotomous. That's how he smuggles in his implicit denial BS. Yeah. And he started doing that as a way of sort of wedging away agnostics. Like he wanted to make it more binary, right? You either know him or you don't. There's not this, well, I'm not sure which way. Why don't you give me some more information and let me decide? Like that's, the idea of the discriminating shopper is not something that Darth's going to entertain, in religious debates. It's like, no, you already know this, but you're denying it explicitly and implicitly. If you're denying his idea of an implicit denial is that, well, I'm undecided. Well, if you're undecided, that means you are saying that your autonomous reasoning trumps God's reasoning. So what you're actually doing is an explicit denial of the existence of God because you think, you haughty human being, that you can think things for yourself. And that was mistake the first. You can't think things for yourself. God thinks things for you. But for some fucked up reason, you have the ability to sin. You have to be saved from your own human reasoning, but your human reasoning is entirely dependent on the God that gave you the capacity to sin and is going to condemn you for it. I think there's some problems there. Work them out.
They're liars. Okay. I've been doing this for 10 years. Getting an adult, intelligent atheist who is civil is rare. Right?
I haven't seen one, actually.
See, this is, by the way,
Rupert's exaggerating there. That's a lot of hyperbole. There are plenty. He has talked to people that he has identified as atheists. Does Rupert think that that Dr. Josh Bowen was uncivil? I mean, I don't know that Didi went as hard on Dr. Bowen as he could. Oh, well, he did because he kept trying to, in some subtle ways, kept trying to tar him. But as being a guest on you're on all these atheist shows, talk about your atheism. He made sure to try to poison that well as much as he could, more so for his own fans and listeners, not so much for everybody else. But I've watched that whole thing, and I don't see a moment when Dr. Bowen was anything other than civil to him. Rupert's not, I haven't seen it. Well, are you saying that because you haven't seen it, there's no such thing as an uncivil? There's no such thing as a civil atheist? Right? I mean, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
Recently have been subscribing to many Twitter atheist YouTube feeds, and I look at their postings on a daily basis. The level of infantile reasoning or adolescent reasoning is staggering among these adults. Okay? Staggeringly childish. So do we have any atheists who would like to step forward and explain why their atheism is rational? See, you can take it to the bank. This is what they will do. They'll come up, they'll pretend to debate, then they'll heckle and troll, and then when they get punished for their bad behavior, then they cry foul that they've been muted in order to censor them, when they're actually muted because of their bad behavior. So anybody have any questions? Good. So as usual, atheism loses, Christian theism wins again.
How? Right? He came in here following a debate that, I mean, I don't know if it would be all that interesting to watch because transcendental arguments are boring. If you want a great breakdown of it, go to Matt Slick's website and take a look at his transcendental argument for God. Lots of problems, and extremely boring. Plus, you can go to Scott Clifton's YouTube channel. Most of you probably know him. Theoretical Bullshit, and watch him kind of tear into that one. That's pretty fun. That goes back a few years, though.
Absolutely.
You have to ask yourself this question. If their position was so intellectual, right, why would so many of them have to resort to trolling, heckling, and catcalling?
Does it have to be intellectual to be right or to have validity? Like, this is a weird idea to me. Like, it's like he's blaming, like, oh, well, these people think that they're just so smart. They're so right. That doesn't really follow from that, right? Like, he's blown off people that just show up and are doubtful. He presents his argument and they're just like, yeah, I'm not convinced. and then he'll get pissed off that they don't accept it. Other people will come at him from different philosophical arguments, and then he tries to stomp on them because they oftentimes know more about, at least one or two branches of philosophy, and raise objections to some of the things that he's shoehorning in. He talks to PhDs in philosophy and demonstrates that his questions are poorly formed or misleading or just, as Dr. J. Gardner put it, empty. Stephen Law wasn't convinced, would just say, like, I'm not sure how you're even defining these things, and based on just the way you ask them, they don't make sense. They're either ill-defined or irrelevant. These are PhDs. If you have PhDs in philosophy that don't understand your questions, that object to some of the terms that you use, that when after asking you follow-up questions asking you to clarify your terms, you become angry and irritated and act as if they're the ones that don't know what they're talking about, when they've obviously spent a lot more time reading about this stuff in a lot of different ways than you have, it becomes pretty apparent to people that you're not an intellectual yourself. This is just a poor thing to lay on. Like, well, if you're so intellectual, like, it doesn't even have to be intellectual. You've made it that case. You've made it the case that it needs to be some kind of intellectual endeavor. You won't accept just doubt. You won't accept an agnostic position. Somebody comes on there and tells them, yeah, I'm not convinced one way or the other. And then you bully them and no, it's got, here's why it has to be one way or the other. Now give me an argument why it's not the case. Like, that's not where you do that to enough people who are already undecided. I mean, if I were undecided and ran into this ding dong, I would have been like, okay, well, if I got to go do that, I'm going to do that just to prove your ass wrong. Because if I don't have the right to tell you that I'm not convinced one way or the other, you somehow want to insist that your worldview makes it the case that I can't be uncertain. Yeah, I'm going to have a problem with that. So he's now projecting onto them like, well, they just think that their arguments are so intellectual. No, the only ones that are coming in now are ones that think that they've got defeaters for some of the things because they've been listening to your arguments. The ones that are just like not convinced probably should never talk to you because you've eliminated that possibility. You've eliminated the possibility of talking to people that want to have some kind of casual conversation about their lack of certainty, their indecisiveness on the issue, their unwillingness or incapability of picking one side or the other when it comes to that proposition. And all they get from you is, no fence. Nobody's on the fence. You're either for them or against them. End of story. So,
and being disruptive. Why would they do that? It's because they know that their position is not intellectual. They have one driving motive. They have one driving motivation. They do not want God to exist. Why do you think so many of the atheist talking heads on YouTube have call-in shows where they can hide behind their microphones, and where if they get seriously challenged, they can just simply railroad the conversation down one of their favorite rabbit trails, and then if the person tries to get back on topic, then the host will accuse them of being disruptive, and then they get muted or ejected from the YouTube stream. Okay?
Yeah, like Matt Dillahunty.
Then they immediately go to, oh yeah, it's just like Matt Dillahunty, who just came into this channel. Like Darth was gone, right? He said he came in here, and I believe he was defending this user, only one God, who he gave great kudos to. It wasn't a terrible argument. It wasn't doing a terrible job. High praise indeed from Dee. And he has to take care of the trolls and the hacklers and the catcallers and all this, the wolf whistlers. They were looking up my skirt, I swear. Those people all have to go, right? He's got to get rid of those and eject them. Then turns around and says, well, that's all these people do. All these atheists do on these shows, these atheist chat shows. They just hide behind a microphone. It's like, you know what? I know what Matt Dillahunty's face looks like. And after years of being labeled Darth Dawkins by your enemies, you have no trouble using that mock-up of hiding behind Richard Dawkins' face, superimposed on Darth Vader. Says something. That's interesting. A few days ago, he was so giddy about debating Matt Dillahunty. Now that was a great troll. Yeah, I heard about that one. That was interesting. That was the J Mike thing, I think. By the way, if it wasn't the J Mike thing and it was something else, I want to know about that.
That's exactly what he does. Okay.
Yep.
By the way, Matt the Bloviator said that I was banned from calling into the atheist Schmerians, right? He publicly said that. But now, according
Schmerians, I think that's actually a deli somewhere. There's nothing quite like, bagel and a lox with a schmear, Oh, Tom Rabbit's here. Hey, Tom. Hey, guys. It wasn't J Mike. His own minion told him about the Matt thing. I think I might be a little. I don't know if I know about this. What's the Matt thing? Tom, if you don't want to, if it's too long to tap it in there, do you want me to put I can post the link in there if you want to come in and describe what's going on. I'm thinking of a different thing. I'm thinking about the J Mike. I think it was the J Mike thing. Or no, I think it was that. I'm probably conflating a couple of things. My bad. I've been mainlining a lot of Darth Dawkins videos that you put up. All right, let me throw that in there. Just for everybody that wants to know, I'm going to post this in here. Probably just going to bring Time Rabbit in here, have him do his thing. We'll get back into the video, wrap that up, and then I'll probably post. Then I'll invite other people to join if they want to. Yeah, here's the link. Yeah, about that. So, James, I saw Darth's face. He streamed by accident. Dusty, crusty, hairy Sasquatch with afro eyebrows. Turns out that wasn't him. That was a troll. Darth Dawkins trolled people. If you need to call Darth Dawkins a liar, you can just point to that example. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Yo, what up?
Hey, no. So, yeah, just covering one of your videos again. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the Matt Dillahunty thing. J Mike, I don't know what he's thinking, but there's an incident where J Mike said, "Hey, I'm an ACA member," and then Darth thought that was really funny, but he left out the other part because, like, he was just saying that because I'm an ACA host, I'm able to have a say in what content is on the show. So if you want to come onto a show that I am on, then I can make that happen, right? That's what the point of him saying he was an ACA host was. Now the thing about like Matt Dillahunty wanting to debate Darth, that's the first time I ever heard that, and that was from one of his people. And then there's it's on my channel. It just says something about Darth Dawkins versus Matt Dillahunty ? So I don't know what it is. Remember the title.
Yeah.
But it's one of his guys comes in and says, "Hey, I heard that Matt said that he wanted to debate you, or he wanted you to call in on the show." Right?
That's right. Yeah, and it turns into this whole thing where there was one quick point about that, but I wasn't going to devote a whole video to it. Yeah, because he goes into that whole thing about like, no, he can come onto mine and then I'll go onto his.
Right, and that's always the way it is, right? So first of all, someone very astutely pointed out that that's what he did to me, right? He's like, well, we can, because I was like, look, I want to do this modern day debate thing. And it's like, well, we can do both, Tom. We can talk here, and then we can do the modern day debate thing, right? And then it's just like, what do you think? I'm stupid? Right. And what happened, right? He talked to me one time and decided I was a troll. And then I would have just been out of luck. Right. The thing about Darth is that you'll notice that he is deathly afraid of making any kind of commitment. Right. Because when you commit to something, you are giving up control. Right.
Right.
And as a massive narcissist and control freak, that's one thing that he never wants to do, right? So even engaging in negotiations like, okay, well, are you going to commit to this? I want to get this promise from you. I want this documented. He's against all that. It's hard to even enter into negotiations with him because those are hard commitments, right? Yeah. He never wants to be in a position where he says, I promise I'm going to be here at this time, or I promise I will debate you within this time frame. I promise I'm going to, give you 90 minutes. He never, ever wants to do that. He is terrified of that sort of thing.
Well, it it was funny too, because like the one where I think this was maybe a month ago, where he was yelling at, maybe it was before I don't know if they've had a permanent falling out, but Otangelo, Darth Dawkins was giving him a hard time because Otangelo had agreed to go debate this person. And Didi was like, well, that guy's a known troll and he's doxed me and all this other kind of stuff. And you need to, basically telling Otangelo, you need to, dishonor that commitment, tell them to, to pound sand, because you shouldn't do that because they were mean to me. And Otangelo's like, well, he's like, I wasn't aware of that. But I've already made the commitment. So it looks bad for me to drop that. Even Tone Loc got after him. Like Tone was like, he's like, I'm not with you here, man. He's like, if Otangelo made a commitment to debate and he doesn't show up, that's going to look bad. And then Darth goes on to explain, well, just tell them that, you know what, I can't, make it about me, essentially was what he told them. Like, unless you get this guy to publicly apologize to Darth Dawkins for the way he doxed and trolled him, I won't be joining you after all. Like, okay.
Right.
But yeah, what I thought was funny was that somebody was like, I can't remember who the username was. He's like, well, why Darth like kind of asks like, why shouldn't he trust me or something like that? And it's like, well, because you've given excuses like this before. So Dillahunty comes into your show for an hour. You guys have a conversation. You made an agreement to go into his show at some later date for an hour. After your conversation, you can just say, you know what, Dillahunty said A, B, and C, and that's an example of how dishonesty is. And by extension, I don't have to honor my previous commitment to his show. I can totally see him doing that. He tried to talk Otangelo into justifying the same kind of thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, like no one trusts you to do that, man. That's the idea that he is nervous about a moderated, neutral platform to have a discussion on is really telling, because he used to do that before, didn't he?
Well, the thing is funny after that Otangelo thing, that he was basically getting mad because people weren't holding up their commitments and talking to him. I forgot who it was with, but it's funny because like he was saying something like, come on, it's not a contract, I mean, it's like, it's not legally binding, but then he was going around and getting mad at people because they weren't holding up their commitment to talk to him or something like that. I forgot what it was, but he's just so ridiculous, man. The funny thing is that he wants to talk to Matt, right? And he talks so much shit about Matt constantly, right? If Darth knew that he could just call in and talk to Matt, he would do it in a heartbeat. What scared him about this is that Matt said, oh, he can call in and I'll talk to him. And so immediately Darth kind of became wary. He was like, hey, hang on, wait a minute. It's like that scene in The Predator, the very end, where he's chasing Arnold the entire time, and all of a sudden Arnold's like, come on, kill me, I'm here. And the Predator's like, hey, wait a minute, this is weird. It's because it's a real change of your tune. And then of course it's a trap, right? Darth thinks that this is some kind of like, they have got some kind of argument they're gonna spring on him, or blah. He doesn't know. He's wary. So yeah. He doesn't want to do it. He has to maintain control at all times.
I shouldn't do this, but to riff on that movie reference, the Predator's reaction to Schwarzenegger's bluff at the end of Predator is like it's sort of like the flip side of Kevin Bacon in Tremors, realizing like, wait a minute, this one ain't dumb. Like he's just been slaughtering people with ease throughout the entire movie, but when he gets to Schwarzenegger, he's like, wait a second, this one's actually put a hurting on me. Like I can't trust this thing. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, Darth is essentially like a high-functioning graboid,
HFG, high-functioning graboid. I think we need it. I think we need to get that to work. I think we need to get that to stick. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it's apt. Well, anyway, yeah, I want to say thanks for doing these videos. You put out quite a few. So, and I've been on kind of a hiatus for the last 3-4 weeks because there wasn't that much going on. I wasn't really doing much. And then I had to move. So I just kind of ended up having this prolonged like absence from YouTube, other than just occasionally tuning in and listening to stuff. But Yeah, lately
course.
he's Didi has been kind of a gold mine because some of his stuff has just been extra, just extra. Like,
he's truly incredible. I'm surprised that some sort of professional psychologist hasn't come out of the woodwork on YouTube or Darth hasn't been used as like a textbook case of like narcissistic personality disorder.
yeah, and it's you'd think like because I mean I know that like I think for most psychologists and psychiatrists it's an ethics thing. You know, they can't diagnose remotely,
Right,
or
exactly.
speculate on it. However, as a counselor, when you saw that interaction between Darth Dawkins and Shannon Q, and she's just like fascinated with his behavior, like, oh my God, what are you doing? You know, I don't always agree with Shannon Q on a lot of stuff, but watching her be genuinely like, she's like leaning forward, trying to get a better look at the specimen under the glass when it came to Darth Dawkins. That was the best part of that whole thing. And I think that's probably why I think, I don't know if Darth Dawkins picked up on that, but if he did, maybe that explains his obsession with Shannon. How does he put it? Shannon Q duck lips.
Shannon Q duck lips, right? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So to all the people, I haven't really made a video about this because I just haven't gotten around to it. But I'll explain something to you about this muting situation because it might not be readily apparent. But in this particular room, politics and religion, what they've done, and I'm not making any of this up. Okay, this is all just real. If you look at the list, there's an account. It's called Attack Dog, right? Now the Attack Dog is not a user. That's a bot, right? And that was a bot that was programmed and created and instituted specifically by one of the administrators of that server. Now the purpose of Attack Dog is that it has a database, a list of users, right? And Darth Dawkins will add to that list of users with a certain command. You know, that's why he's in this video. He's like, oh, I gotta type it in, and some of the people are saying something like, "Oh, you typed the command in wrong," etc., like that. So what's happening is that Darth is in real time, you know, adding people on the air quotes list, right? So what is the list? Well, I'll tell you what the list is. The list, if you're on the list, Darth Dawkins can enter in a command and says turn on Attack Dog or turn off Attack Dog. And when the Attack Dog is turned on, every single person on that list, boom, is muted. Last I heard, there's over 200 people on the list. Now, in addition to that, once the Attack Dog is turned on, a person who was on the list but not in the room, when they enter the room, a sound effect is played of duct tape, right? And
yeah, I've heard that. Yep.
The purpose of that, according to Darth, right, is to trigger and humiliate the person because they know that they can't talk, right? So to summarize, this bot is Darth's. By the way, this goes with him room to room and stuff like that, right? He can manifest it anywhere he wants.
In other servers?
I think that he can. Well, I mean, it can be implemented in other servers. Like that person owns another server, so he just turned the Attack Dog on in his server. He can set it up so Darth can do it, you know, in other servers.
Basically, yeah, so like an owner mod has to basically allow, but anybody could grab that bot and let him use it if they.
Well, he made it, so I don't know if anyone can grab it. But the point is that this Attack Dog, is a Darth Dawkins portable personal safe space generator. It's not an Attack Dog. It's a safe space dog.
Yeah.
It literally creates like like an insulated chamber for Darth where he can exist as a snowflake without melting, right? It generates a safe space for him.
In the same way that his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ will cast his trolls and critics into a fire of eternal conscious torment, Didi uses the attack dog to create the same kind of environment for himself here on social media.
It's just crazy. He loves it. You'll hear him just like he'll hear the duct tape and goes, it's like the pleasure
I've heard
in
him
his
do that.
voice is it sounds sexual, right? It actually sounds like he's really getting satisfaction from this. It's just really crazy.
You think he's into like duct tape bondage? And I don't know. Think about it. Ugh. Oh.
Well, I mean, he is super narcissistic, so I think he's probably into some kind of like sadism or something like that for sure.
Yeah, it's like I've heard him do that. Going, oh, that's just so good. And I'm like, when I heard it, I was like, is that the sound of tape being like, how do you like that tape over your mouth? And I'm like, it is. Why is there a sound effect of duct tape? Like I thought like one of his goons was like, playing that, just to, give Daddy Didi a little bit of a hard on. And I'm like, why would you want something that kind of implicitly sinister playing in the back? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's just odd. Like, why not a Knives Out sound or something? The sword being like, no, duct tape. I'm gonna.
I mean, what I will say, I mean, I'm not gonna say that there's not people, that don't deserve to be on the list. There's definitely people that deserve to be on the list, right? Some people even in this video are just kind of like obstructing and just making noises and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But the point is that why don't other people have problems with the same people? You know what I mean? So this was an existing conversation in this case. It had been going on for hours, right? People have been talking to that guy.
Only one God.
Only one God, right? I was listening to it, right? And why is it that Darth comes in and in less than 1 minute, there's all these problems, And Darth, in his narcissistic head, actually believes he's not at fault at all. It has nothing to do with him. It's all everyone else that's the problem. Can you imagine going into these situations like this? People are talking for hours just fine, and when you show up, all of a sudden everyone's an asshole all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? This is fucking deep, man. I'm telling you, Star psychology is truly fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly fascinating. I mean, to be so deluded that everywhere you go on the internet, it smells like shit, and you never think to check your shoes. That is fucking fascinating.
Well, and the idea that you brought this up before, I think, even in, I don't know if it was the video that we did together with Danny or before, but you'd said like, if this guy just had his own Discord server, it'd probably be quite popular. If he had a YouTube channel and can kind of control himself, he'd probably have a very successful, possibly monetized YouTube channel. The only thing I can think is that if he had that kind of feedback coming in from like the views and stuff, and they try to monetize him, he would be thinking that, because his political views are just repellent. I mean, even if you're a conservative,
right.
I would argue his political views are repellent. So I think he avoids it because he thinks like, if he started talking about that stuff, they'd start tagging his videos and stuff. Because I'm pretty sure he believes that Trump won the election and all that other kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
his political views are funny too.
Yeah.
The problem is, I mean, like that's the questions, right? Like, I truly believe that if Darth started off early, he says he's been doing this for 10 years. If he created something the channel back then, added to it, by now, I truly believe that he'd be making 6 figures a year. Easy, right? So the question is, why is he not doing this, right? Well, the explanation, I think, is that, well, if you're going to be like a semi-public figure, and you're probably going to have more people that have eyes on you are going to want to know more about you. It's just going to be harder logistically, right, to kind of remain completely anonymous.
Yeah.
So I think that it's the case that if he were to put himself out there, have like this, let's say he was doing a show every day, and 5 days a week or something, and all this stuff adds up to like, look, my shit's gonna get out there somehow, right? And especially the way he treats people, people are just gonna be incentivized to try and figure stuff out, all that stuff, right? So that's probably one thing, right? He definitely doesn't want that. He's definitely afraid of people finding out about him. He does not want that. Understandably, probably no one wants that, but him, for whatever reason in particular, he really doesn't want people knowing about that. And it's probably some things that are in conflict with his beliefs, and probably going to be hypocrisy at some level at the very least. It's just problems, right? I mean, it's not exclusive to Darth, right? I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty much going to hurt more with him because he's got a position where he's constantly prescribing behavior and all this stuff and calling people degenerate, blah blah blah.
Yeah, he would end up. I mean, I think you're right. I think if he ended up trying to push himself where he got monetized, he'd end up doing things where and the more, if he did that and put himself out there, you'd have more people challenging him on, some of his goofier political takes, which probably I don't know if he could reject them. I think he'd want to engage in them, but then he'd end up getting into a situation where he'd feel insecure that YouTube was going to demonetize him or, yeet his channel. And then the second would be like, if he wants to really voice his convictions on things like the gays, he can't be honest about his position on that because it's basically hate speech.
Yeah, I actually heard him say something about like they had taken away the stage abilities in their server because someone reported, and I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. Never heard of that. But
they took away the stage ability for him,
for his server, the Reformation server.
Wow, really? Okay. I mean, for the most part, any of these things that he goes on to, it's like if he were to be like completely. If he were to be totally 100 about his opinions on homosexuality, LGBTQ, yeah, it would be it would be hate speech and an automatic TOS violation. So,
going back to the thing about him putting himself, doing his own thing. Well, first of all, in addition to having to put himself out there, he loses an incredible amount of control. Darth is a control freak, right?
Yeah.
And when you are beholden to an audience, right, you have to all of a sudden cater to these things like, okay, I can't have dead air. I can't just ramble. I can't just say the same thing over and over. I can't just repeatedly just say Matt Dillabloviator and like I'm going to lose viewers, right? He's going to be beholden to catering to viewers, right? He can't just go walk away whenever he wants. He can't, just talk about anything he wants. He's going to have to perform, right? If you're doing a show, then you need to perform. You're going to have to like kind of give the people what they want, right? And some of what they want is him talking and engaging certain people. They want to hear that, right? And when you just get into an interesting discussion and all your viewers want to hear it, and then you just boom, you kick them because they're a troll, right? You're gonna lose viewers.
Yeah, I think he only works in his purest state, and in this case, it's sort of like he kind of works on the same level as like accident footage or morgue photos or soccer injuries, those, or those videos of people like, screwing up a skateboard landing or, those kinds of accidents, people watch this stuff just kind of for the sick thrill. It's like this kind of what happens. I mean, just sort of attracted to this kind of disaster zone and just watch this guy who is this bundle of all these dysfunctional tendencies and bad habits with a head full of crazy ideas and just shitty neural wiring, struggling to cope with a world that he believes is so far beneath him. It's miraculous. It's just this, it's like lightning in a bottle. Like when you see this guy, it's like, holy shit, this dude is just.
Yeah, I agree.
He's he's basically a unicorn. He's a social media unicorn. There's not too many people. I mean, there are some guys that come kind of close, like maybe Smokey Saint has the same level of open contempt for most everybody, but he's not like Darth. He's not quite as out of touch. He's close. I mean, Smokey Saint's. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I've heard him. Yeah.
He's pretty cringeworthy too, but he's not like he's and he and Darth Dawkins have actually fought. They've argued with each other because.
Yeah, I've heard some of those. Those were interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe you're friends with Smokey Saint. I don't know, but
I almost have no interactions with Smokey Saint at all. So
okay. If you're an atheist, then he'll chalk you up as what is usually he calls people like degenerate trash clowns or whatever. Those are some of his favorites.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. You can say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing is that Darth can't do this on his own, right? He needs to kind of look, I made the analogy before. He needs a Silver Surfer. He needs someone to act as a herald for him. And he just wants to, someone else to do all the legwork, and he just kind of arrives at his leisure and devours a world or two, and then just maybe fucks off for a while.
I don't like the amount of control that he wants. Like he'd have it with his own server. Like, and he's capable of kind of understanding these. Maybe he needs people to kind of set this stuff up for him.
Yeah, but when he does actually have all that control. There's no restrictions, so he self-destructs it, right? It's just not viable.
That would be such an interesting.
Look, he's tried it before. In these situations where he plays the ultimatum card and it doesn't work, right? Which inevitably always happens, right? And see, that's the thing about going all in. Whenever he gives them one of these ultimatums, he's going all in. And you can't go all in over and over and over. Eventually you're going to get called, right? And they're going to have a better hand where they're not going to acquiesce to your demand. And then it's either he sucks it up and goes back anyways, even after getting an ultimatum, or he just says he just fucks off. So what do we know about Darth Dawkins? What's he going to do? Well, he's just going to fuck off. There's no way he's going to suck it up and come back.
Yeah.
And if he does, it's going to be like, well, I didn't actually come back. These other guys were begging me to come back. They really wanted you to come back, right? It's always got to be some kind of explanation, right? So the times where he didn't come crawling back, he just literally sat alone in a server. Alone, making announcements like atheists welcome, come on, and we'll talk to anybody, any view, blah blah blah. Nobody was interested in going in there, just with him with absolute control, right? Because he has zero self-control, right? It's even worse than what you're seeing here.
Yeah, that's true, because what you're able to put into a video is some kind of extended discourse that's happening between him and other people. I didn't stop to think about how many times he just pops in and is like, "Hey, all comers, take your best shot at Grandpa Dawkins."
Yeah, I've seen him come into a conversation, not like one where maybe let's say 2 or 3 people on the list are talking to one person. He comes into the room, listens for a few seconds, doesn't like what one of those people on the list are saying, activates his attack dog bot. The discussion is now done because they're all completely muted. He waits there for another 5, maybe 10 minutes. There's just completely dead air, and then leaves. He's literally going from room to room, just completely killing the conversation at his leisure, right?
And he's doing this
and then
like
fucking off.
So the conversation that's happening, he's got access to the server. He's got his dog. He's got his attack dog. Conversation's happening, and all of these people are on his attack dog list. And he just mutes them all, just nukes the whole thing.
Right.
That's
it's happened many times.
Does he even give them a warning, or does he just click and you hear the tape?
No warning.
Okay, so he literally then shows up, abducts them all, throws them in the back of his panel van.
They're just out unmuted. Then everyone's silent, and then those people just go into another room or something like that because they're muted. It's crazy.
What a dick. Jesus. And now this is making more sense now, because when I've been told that he basically puts when he shows up, he puts a shitload of mileage on any server that he ends up getting a channel in. So I'm wondering if that's the thing. That's what usually ends up killing it. If they allow him the same kind of control in other channels where he starts going around and throwing his weight around. And then it's like, okay, you can throw your weight around in your own channel. That's where we set up a spot for you. Does he get pissed and they're like, no, I should be able to go to, because I would think that like for him, if he kicks them out of the one that they're in, he wants to follow. If they don't disappear, if they don't fuck off completely, they just go to another channel. He can see him. I got to think that bothers him.
Oh yeah, it bothers him. Yeah.
So if he's got the permission to then go after them in that one and do it again, he's just going to destroy the server eventually. Like people are just going to start avoiding it. They'll go to another thing, and I'm like, okay, yeah. The plague of locust has arrived at whatever politics and religion. Everybody back to Reformation.
Well, here's the pattern that usually happens is there's the way that Darth operates. They want him in the server because he generates a lot of traffic. That's okay. We get that. That's easy to understand. So, in order to get him in the server to generate traffic, you usually have to reward him, and that comes in the form of power, right? He wants power and control in a server, right? If he doesn't have that, there's no reason to differentiate your server from another server that he could just walk into, right? So the weird thing though is that once you give him some kind of power, you can't take it away. If you take away a power from him, I'm not sure exactly what goes on in his head, but maybe it's seen as like some sort of psychological slight, or he finds it offensive, or I'm not really sure. How could you take away, So this is what I always tell people is that, look, you should think about what you're willing to give him as far as control, like his own room and control in that room, right? That seems to be kind of almost reasonable, right? But the second that you give him, like, say, global mod abilities or something like that, just be prepared if and when things go wrong and you are in a position of taking away mods from Darth, he's most likely to just leave the server, right? Because he can't, something about it where once you give him power, if you take it away, he'd rather tell you to fuck off and then go to a new server where he has less power. Does that you see how that doesn't make any sense, right? He's like, so let's say you just you give him like mods but you take away his you gave him admin and you took away admin. Well, if you take away his admin, he's going to tell you to fuck off. He's going to leave the server. But then he'd go into, say, a server where he just had mods, right? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. It's something about the slight of him having something and then it being taken away or something. I don't know. So what I always tell people when they're giving mods to people in general on Discord is that it's actually not so simple as whether or not they'd be a good mod, because you can't ever be perfect. You can't ever know. So when you're thinking about making someone a mod, you have to think about two things, actually. One, how are they going to act as a mod? But in addition to that, how are they going to act if you have to take away their mods? Because a lot of people don't take it well. They take it actually really, really poorly, and they feel slighted, and there's going to be a lot of animosity and resentment directed towards you, right? And this is to some degree probably at least half people, right? You're gonna have to like make some kind of justification, blah blah. They get sort of belligerent and the confrontational. It's just a mess, right? You can't just be like, "Hey, I'm taking away that message." Like they're like, "Okay, cool, no questions asked," right? It always turns into something. So
you got to figure. I mean, this is like kind of the true definition of trolling at this point, because like, the idea that so he's got an established position on one, and then he gets some pushback. They're not taking all of his power. He's actually got more power there than he would have in a new one, but he would rather blow that up, go to a new server, start the process over again, all because he can begin the situation of starting to push those limits and press those boundaries again.
Darth has like Darth has a very high order commitment, right? So when you're trying to figure out like what Darth would do in a situation, if you slight him, or as he would say, or if you in any way give him the middle finger, then he wants to just like get away from that. He can't handle that, right? And he also has, not only does he feel very insulted and offended by things like that, as he takes it very personally, but he has an instinct to also like fire back and like try and harm the person. Like, okay, well then you don't get me, he needs to fire back with something to save his ego, right? So he has a very, very strong sense of punishment. It actually takes a lot of joy and delight seemingly from punishing someone. Like I told you, let's say if Darth says, you shouldn't do this, this is going to happen, and then the person doesn't take Darth's. I think all that sort of sense, because when I feel like, a fraction of what I think Darth is feeling, when I try to like put himself as like, look at his behavior, and I kind of think like, what's going on here? And I kind of like look to my own experience and like where I've had some kind of similar feeling, but only just like a fraction of the intensity. That's what I come up with. I feel like, when you tell someone something and they kind of blow you off and they don't take your advice, or they don't do what you say, and then exactly what you said was going to happen happens, you feel this kind of like I told you so gratification and like resentment, and like like this part of you wants them to have that sort of experience of like, dang it, I should have listened to Darth, or like and so, like I said, I feel that at a fraction, right? But I would probably be more compelled in a lot of situations to be like, maybe I won't even say I told you so, and maybe I'll just try to help them even though they didn't listen to what I said, right? But Darth, oh my God, the degree in which he feels this satisfaction, he wants them to be punished. He wants them to be like in distress, like, oh my God, I was so stupid. Oh my God, Darth was so smart. He wants that to keep going. He gets satisfaction from that, right? Yeah. And so, of course, it's only logical that, the religion that he subscribes to is big into like eternal lake of fire torment, right?
Yeah. He would reject that though, right? Like if you said like, maybe your psychology and your attraction to that sense of like, because I'm sure like his desire to see people punished for him is his righteous sense of justice. But I think based on the way it's applied, I think for some of us, it's like, okay, yeah, but we've watched you and some of it borders on kink. So maybe that's informing why you're attracted to Christianity and this particular kind of Christianity as opposed to, well, when these other Christians would be like, hey, Darth, maybe you should take it easy on these atheists, because if you think about it theologically, they're not regenerated by the Holy Spirit yet, but you're just hammering at them like it's their fault, like they're doing it. And he just pushes back on that. Well, they need to fucking shape up. And it's like, holy shit. Like, he needs it to be personal. He needs them to be wrong.
I think it's more a product of his narcissism, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that most things stem from that. So I think the reason he enjoys the punishment is because if you're like a huge narcissist and your advice, your prescriptions, what you say, you get blown off, right? And they don't listen to you. The narcissist is going to take that really, really personally, right? And so they want you to suffer for not realizing how great they were, how right they were, stuff like that. They get enjoyment from that. They want that, right? So I think that's what most of it comes from. I think at the center of all this is just Darth Dawkins's NPD. Interesting thing about the eternal fire, before I forget it, is that just the way in this very video, right? There's a part where he says, I told you that if you troll me, then I'm gonna mute everyone. So now you did this. You got everyone muted, right? He wants to say it's kind of like, no, God's not sending you to eternal hellfire. You're sending yourself to it. This was your doing. You sent yourself to eternal hellfire, right? So there's this weird sense of like responsibility, which is just completely twisted, right? It's just like Darth has said things like, why are you making me insult you, right? Why are you making me hate you? It's just crazy ways of thinking at things.
Yeah. Well, it's really not much different than like the psychopath in any movie, which this part is actually kind of accurate to their personality, even though it's become just a stereotype. The idea like why did you make me kill her, right? Like the police are coming after him, so he's now under the gun, so he has to kill somebody, but it's not his fault. He didn't choose to do that. You made him. You put him in that position, and it's like, all right, psycho. But I don't know that Darth reaches the level of a psychotic, but he's definitely narcissistic enough where he doesn't even take responsibility for that. Right?
No.
Like that can't be on him either. It's like one of you comes in here and misbehaves, and like, oh, look what he did to all of you. Like, okay, but that person that went in there and just happened to trigger you, knowingly or unknowingly, which between that person and you, Darth, which one has a bot with a troll list built into auto mute so that you can avoid you can just avoid an entire group of people you've deemed unworthy,
right?
Yeah.
With regards to hell, though, it's an interesting observation is that I've heard him, when people describe hell, they bring up hell and ask him about hell and say, it's like, why is it that this loving God sends people and punishes them for a finite crime and sends them to eternal torture? And I've heard him, this is so funny, he actually pushes back on torture. He's like, well, they're not being tortured, right? But then I've also heard him saying that they're going to be eternally tormented. Like, it's just like something about the word torture. He's like, oh, I don't like the sound of that. My God, they're not being tortured. They're being tormented eternally. They're not being tortured.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, no, well,
because torture sounds just sort of just in your face. It's got like this malicious intent. He wants to inflict pain.
And it's kind of weird that he does draw it's like, okay, so what is his idea? Like, well, torture, he would be actively waterboarding somebody for eternity, where torment is that person's depressed and he just ignores them and leaves them there. I'm like, you'd be sad for the rest of time or whatever. It's a really weird well, that's kind of an odd way to do it. Like, and given coming from a guy who told a woman like, I don't know. Which was weird because he actually violated what Isaiah chapter 7 verses 15, I think. where he's like, I don't know about the age of consent, but if God throws babies into a place of eternal conscious torment, that's his call, and I'm fine.
Right,
I'm fine with it. Like, okay, then don't you want to know to what extent it's going to torture? Right? Like,
yeah. In the previous video, I think where it says it's called Darth Answers or something like that. There's a woman on there who says she had an abortion, and she's asking Darth. It's a pretty funny video, actually. She's asking Darth whether or not her baby is in heaven, right? She's worried about her baby. And by the way, this person came into my server and she told us that this was all made up. So don't worry about this. Don't get invested at all in this story.
I don't have to do that. If this is true, this is terrible kind of. Yeah,
right. We can skip over all that. But Darth just flat out says, like, I don't know if your baby is in heaven or hell. So in Darth's view, right, under Darth's view, it's possible that babies go to hell, right? Every baby that's ever died, it's possible they've all they're currently, right now, being eternally tormented, writhing in pain, gnashing of teeth in hellfire, right?
Right.
Now, how can someone reconcile that? It's weird, right? But Darth goes on to say, it's like, well, wherever they are, it's just, right?
Which is weird, because you would think then, like, okay, well, if this is a situation where God is placing this fetus or embryo in a place of eternal conscious torment, the reason for you terminating it, well, I guess it doesn't entirely change, but it's odd. Like, most Christians believe that murder is a violation because you're taking the life of something created in the image of God. It's the whole violation of the Imago Dei thing. But generally, I think most Christians adhere to, because of verses like the one in Isaiah, that you wouldn't hold a child incapable of that's incapable of that kind of comprehension, that kind of judgment, accountable for not making the correct decisions. And he seemed to be, you're right, he seemed really flippant about the fact that it's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter which way it goes for me. I know that God's just, so it's okay. It's like, well, if you're going to be the one reaching out to people and somebody is concerned about this, let's say it's somebody who is, actually had an abortion and is really, screwed up by this whole thing. You giving this flippant answer like, well, yeah, when you had the abortion, maybe your child's burning in hell fire forever. Okay, if he's having a flippant conversation with somebody who's like, emotionally distraught over this, that's pretty fucking irresponsible. The entailment is, like you said, every child that's ever been aborted. And the other thing that I find interesting too is that he thinks when an abortion is defined by elective abortion, but what does that mean for miscarriages?
Right.
Do miscarriages go back to heaven, or do they also, like, elective terminations of pregnancy go to hell? Yeah, I mean, he doesn't think through things well, but I think he got that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it seems to be what's going on is that when he says that, because really what it boils down to is just like whatever God does is defined as just, right? But it seems like it doesn't seem like that's all that's going on there. It seems like he's saying, I don't know which way is just. And it seems like there's actually some kind of, I mean, if you asked him, he would say whatever God does is just, but it doesn't seem like that's all that's going on. It seems like he's saying, like, this whole torturing of babies seems to me to be not just, but it could be the case that it actually is just, right? But that seems to conflict with just is just whatever God does, because then all he'd be saying is, I don't know which one God chooses, right? And then therefore, so, but I don't know if he would say that he thinks it would be good for babies to be eternally tormented. That seems like weird to say. And Darth won't answer questions like that. When you question him and you say something like that,
yeah,
he'll just start talking about something. He'll never answer the question.
He dodges a lot of theological challenges. But and the thing that he left off, the thing that I clued in on when he was talking to her about that, I'm like, okay, well, his justification was, well, I think this is kind of weird because there's a couple different ways this can be said. Well, if you're a terminated fetus, is that's not what he's. Your baby's in the fire. That's part of God's justice, but is that part of His mercy? That's the other side to Him. This is a morally perfect being that a lot of Christians tend to believe, and this is always it's a contradictory thing for a lot of skeptics. How are you always just and always merciful at the same time? Because being perfectly just means everyone gets exactly what they deserve for the reasons they deserve it. And perfectly merciful would be everyone, people are provided, something, despite the fact that they didn't deserve it. He can't be perfectly just and perfectly merciful. That usually theologians try to say, like, well, He knows when to apply His perfect mercy and His perfect justice. Okay, and if you accept that,
it's a problem.
And if you accept that, it's like, okay, well, I can do that. But when Darth presents this to somebody and it's like, oh, well, as far as God's justice, what he's basically saying is, as far as I'm concerned, God's justified throwing anyone into the fire. Sure, fine, you're a fundamentalist Christian and you have a punishment kink. That makes sense. That tracks. But you also have this merciful quality that this God that you state exists too. That Dee heavily de-emphasizes the mercy part. It's all about, God is coming to take your scalp kind of shit. He's gonna, when He comes back, he's got an iron, he's got a sword and a club, and he's gonna kick the shit out of everybody that ever looked at him crossways or whatever, So it's just like, okay, like he's coming back like Billy Jack or something. Anyway, yeah, this has been a good conversation. You want to stick around? I'm gonna finish up this video review because I've been on for about 2 hours. Do you want to stick around for that or take off, or you can do whatever you want?
I might be here like semi-dormant.
Okay. Because I don't have too much more of this. I think maybe
go for it.
I think I've got maybe 6 more minutes of this thing left, so I'll play it through. But yeah,
I'll be right back. I'm gonna drink.
All right.
To one of his feckless little sniveling henchmen, he goes, "Oh, Matt Delaboviator wants you to talk to you. He wants you to call in." Well, Matt Delaboviator knows where he can find me. Does he think I'm so stupid as to fall for his little mute game on his little call-in show? If he's really badass, if he really has brass balls, why doesn't he show up on any of these Discord outlets? Because surely he could record it and he could play it on the Atheist Experience, right? No, because he's not badass. Because he hides behind the microphone. And you see, I don't mute people for being intelligent. I don't mute people for disagreeing. But when people heckle, troll, catcall, they're disruptive, then you get muted. And then they go, oh, we're being censored. Yeah. Your bad behavior tells me a lot that I need to know about your poor parenting.
They don't even have a basis of what is bad and good behavior. That is why.
Yes, they do.
No, they have none.
They do. I don't know why this is just so stupid. Yes, they do. If they didn't, they wouldn't really be able to function much in the rest of society. Whether you think that they're just shallow and they're just attaching themselves to secular notions of good or bad, or probabilistic reasons for good or bad, or subjective, whatever horrible thing that you want to attach before that. Atheists and skeptics still have a standard for morality. The fact that they don't think that it's grounded in the commands of your God or your God's nature or whatever, both of which are problematic, does not mean that they have an absence of any moral code. That does not follow. It might not be a good moral code. You might be able to criticize it, but it is not an absence of one. Please, Darth Dawkins and your friends, stop making this claim. It is a bad claim. It is demonstrably false.
No, what they say is, they'll say, oh, it's something evil because God says so. And I say, yeah, because God says so, because God cannot lie. And what God says is true and conforms to His eternal character. And His eternal character and being is the standard by which everything measures up to. And you'll know.
Yeah, but Darth has a problem with this particular thing. He believes that all facts are contingent upon God and evil is a fact. If evil is a fact, then it must be contingent upon God. So God, if God is the ultimate definer, or he can declare something good or bad, what he's declared bad comes from him. It has to originate from him. Everything originates from him. Everything is foundationally established by him. So if it has a property of good or a property of evil, or a facet of which, or an attribute, however you want to call it, that came from that. If it didn't, the quality of evil is somehow independent of whatever thing is being described as evil, that thing is also still dependent upon God. Where did that property of evil originate? And if you want to say that the fact that it's evil, it is a fact that this thing is evil, then evil is still a fact, even as a descriptor. That comes from God. All facts are contingent upon God. This is terribly useless and almost completely irrelevant for trying to explain anything about morality.
Also go, oh, so you're doing divine command theory. Something is evil because God said so, and yet
you're not even doing divine command theory well. That's part of some people's problems. But if you were getting it completely accurate, yeah, you would run into issues where you end up into the claims of super subjectivity of morality, which you don't want to address.
They're the very ones who say things are evil because they say so. Well, why is this bad? Why is that evil? Well, because it doesn't provide for the flourishing of sentient beings. Well,
yeah.
So
how did they know that is what is good?
No. The point is, say, well, why is that to be valued? Because you say so, or they go, well, it's because it's not productive to society. Well, why is that important? Why should that be valued? Why? Because you say so.
Correct.
You do that pretty good, Darth.
Well, I'm doing a caricature of their voice.
Oh yeah, I'm saying
not that they all talk like that, but the purpose of doing a caricature of the voice is to exemplify the stupidity of their reasoning. It's not that they all talk that way, but they're literally stupid reasoning. I've been doing this for years. Okay, I'm still waiting for to talk with intelligent atheists. I'm waiting. I'm here. Come on in.
You know what the purpose of the voice is, Jay? The purpose of the voice. The voice is to look. He's not actually dissecting what they're saying as the argument or logically going through it. But everyone in the room, he's signaling to them by using the voice what to believe in. Right? This is classic Darth behavior, where he weaves a narrative, and he's trying to tell you what to think, right? Without actually giving you good reasons to think it.
Yeah, it's a nice way to kind of poison the well. Like, oh, if you hear these things coming from him, imagine it coming from somebody that's whiny, and you can just automatically assume that this person's wrong. Like, even though I've heard him talk to some people that have given kind of even flimsier kind of challenges to things like divine command theory and issues about evil, good and evil and stuff like that. But like this, most of the people that could probably give provide a more robust rebuttal to the kinds of claims he makes about good and evil are on that attack dog mute list. So.
Right, exactly.
At that point, he's only got himself to blame. Like, you've muted so many people that could be a challenge to you. The only people that you're talking to now are new people that show up who haven't really figured out that if they come in there kind of snarky or something like that, they're probably just going to get added to the list. And then and that just confirms his bias that it's just these snot-nosed punk teenager mentality atheists that all they want to do is hackle and catcall and troll. I still don't understand why he says catcalling. It's so fucking weird. Like, no one is flirting with you, Darth. No one.
I have numerous interactions, okay, across a span of time with some intelligent atheists. When I say numerous, I need to qualify that, meaning over time. But they're rare in terms of day-to-day situations. Okay, the vast majority of atheists are either have a teenage mentality as adults, or they're literally stupid teenagers.
I think that, and I know this is random, but this has just been in my mind, like, throughout the course of being in this server, like, I think y'all should establish rules for communication, such as, like, no profanity, because that's something that people commonly use to hide behind.
Yeah, we already have the rules here. Act like an adult, right?
Well, Darth Dawkins is going to have to excuse himself from the fucking room then.
Right. So this Christian, right? I think what I'm going to assume that this is a Christian. This Christian walks into the movie. It's already playing. He perceives like, oh, we got another atheist problem. You know, well, how are we gonna mitigate this problem, right? How are we gonna deal with these like potty mouth atheists? Hey, Darth, what do you think if we instituted a rule where there's no profanity, right? Darth, of course. Remember what I told you about Darth? He never wants to discuss these types of things. He's gonna just kind of hand wave these things, right? Once he gets into this discussion, it's just gonna be bad news for him, right? So he just wants to really just shoo this guy off the stage as quickly as possible, right? Because this is everything that continues from here on is going to be bad news for him, right? But yeah, Darth would be one of the biggest offenders within this conversation. He's the biggest offender, right?
Yeah. Especially the way he uses it. You know, he's telling people to shut the fuck up and shut your fucking mouth and you're a fucking liar. Like, you know, and he'll yell it at kids. Like if they don't have a teenage mentality, a lot of them are under the age of 18, and he's just like using like, do you really think it's appropriate for a grandpa to be dropping F-bombs on minors? Clearly on Discord it is, and Darth Dawkins is justified because Jesus called people a brood of vipers.
Right.
So
right,
that gives him the ability to drop F-bombs on people, including other Christians, because I've heard him swear at them too.
Y'all have the rules for no profanity already?
Okay, listen, we've already gone over this, okay?
Okay.
Now I would
clearly a touchy subject, like yeah. Right. He's not gonna touch that one.
He wants this over.
Yeah. Like, you're making an interesting Christian point. I'd rather avoid that because I am a profane sack of shit.
To remove the survey meat on all of these morons, but I know what's going to happen again. Okay, we'll do it. Okay? It's that simple. So maybe we can hope and pray that there's some intelligent atheist somewhere.
Check your list. Check your list, Darth. It sounds like you got 200 and counting. I'm sure plenty. If you give him some time, you might get something out of that. Like, this is kind of weird. This to me is like, so, I mean, despite the fact that, I mean, he's got this like horrible personality that's a train wreck that's, you know, fascinates me and others. So just keep watching this guy, like, you know, repeat the same shtick and, you know, make all the same mistakes. But the idea that, like, I'm curious, does Darth have, for Darth, is there an equivalent of himself in his life? Is there someone that he just repeatedly watches? Like, he can't get enough of watching, like, this person, like, you know, face plant or whatever. Does he have that in his life? Because what it seems like, he's got the exact opposite. He just has people show up. He doesn't take them seriously. As soon as he finds out they're skeptics, he gives them a little bit of a cursory examination. If they don't want to play ball with him and agree with him right away, then he mutes them and they're gone. All he has is a multitude of very superficial acquaintances and exchanges with people. But he doesn't really, like, I haven't heard him really dig in deep to one atheist with like a lot of, you know, with a lot to say, doesn't dig in deep on like examining their arguments and kind of breaking down their thoughts and giving it back and forth. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, it's mostly like hand waving and, you know, this is sophistry. But when you make an allegation of sophistry, what you're saying is that this person is employing the use of fallacious arguments or fallacious reasoning.
Yeah.
Now, that can be hashed out, right? If you're saying that this line of reasoning doesn't follow, well, then you can show that. You could show that, but he never wants to do that. It's always just, he just leaves it at that, and then it's just hand waved away. There's no delving into these issues.
I just wanted to put this on, like, from Clockworks. I would follow Baal. He is the god of wine and tits.
I like how Otangelo always shows up and he's like, "Oh, Tom really likes Darth Dawkins." Yeah, bro. Yeah, I do. I think he's fucking amazing. He's fascinating.
It doesn't matter how many times people tell Otangelo that Darth Dawkins is a lolth cow. Like, that's the attraction, is watching this bundle of just dysfunctional craziness.
I mean, it just seems like it's just
in the world.
it just seems like it's designed as an Otangelo dig, like, oh, Darth lives in your head rent free or something. Whatever. If that's what you want to call it, fine, whatever.
No, which is weird because it's like, no, I mean, he's out there. What I do is I help myself to a bench in the park and listen to this guy, watch him foam at the mouth and spin around like the Tasmanian devil. And then I comment on, like if it attempted to speak and it tried to make a point, I then comment on like what I think might be right or wrong about it. There's other people that I could do this with, but they're not quite as.
None of them are the Darth level. I mean, there's
nobody that. I mean, even Saiten Bruggencate did not reach this level of just pure human dysfunction. There is something just almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's lightning in a bottle. This guy.
Yeah, I mean, we came for the Jesus arguments and stuff, but we all, when it comes to Darth, we all stayed for the pathology. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like this narcissistic, it's not even just that one. It might be like a bundle of like almost like a Three Stooges effect. There's so many personality disorders trying to like cram their way simultaneously through the doorway that you just get this like muddle of different things. So different flare-ups happen depending on what his mood is. Cerberus Hex says Jefferson's. It seems like Otangelo has admitted he isn't a Christian. Yeah, I saw the definition he gave, and that does sound like pantheism. God is existence itself. So maybe Otangelo's moved on to something else. I mean, he tried going from evidentialism to the precept thing, and then Darth cast him out away from me. Wicked lazy servant. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, Otangelo could not. Maybe he isn't. Maybe he's back in Darth's graces now. So, but anyway, folks,
has Darth been obsessing over Shannon Q lately? Not as much. Still, look, Darth just fixates on whoever like he's exposed to, right? So he just, as Shannon Q is doing stuff and on shows and blah blah blah, he'll be just talking about her, and then if he has a short interaction with her, then all of a sudden it'll just be amped up to he's just talking about them just nonstop, right?
Yeah.
But you gotta understand that he's talking about like all these people constantly, right? Like I don't know how many times a day he says, "Well, I talked to Lawrence Krauss, right?" And blah 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 blah, or it'll be like, "I talked to Massimo Pigliucci," and it's however he mispronounces it. It's like, and this is a man with 2 earned PhDs. He just goes on about how he pwned them.
A guy with such disrespect for even community college level education, and yet an higher level education is worth something in reference to how badly he owned them.
Right. So here's how credentials work for Darth, right? If Darth perceives that he pwned the person, and in this case he thinks he beat Massimo Pigliucci, then oh my God, he's got 2 earned PhDs, and I owned him, right? The PhDs are working for Darth in a way where it is able to like quantify how great Darth is, right? But if things don't go very well for Darth and they have 2 earned PhDs, well, then it just goes to show that they'll give a PhD to any dummy.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. He can be dismissive of it if that person's trying to claim some kind of intellectual or philosophical high ground. But for him, once he's, quote, smoked them, and he would have
as a classic narcissist, right? He's able to use sort of anything in a way where either scenario, like Darth is great, for example, or Darth wins, or the other person sucks, right? Classic example. Hey, how old are you? Well, if you're 16, well then guess what? You are not learned of the world. You lack wisdom, and you're just talking out your ass, right? And I'm way smarter than you. Well, what happens if you're 47? Well, that's a really embarrassing that you're so old and you're reasoning like a child. No matter how they answer, no matter what they answer, it's a win for Darth, and they suck.
Yeah, you're either actually too
same
young.
thing with a PhD.
Yeah, you're either actually too young, and you can't measure up, or you have the mentality of somebody who's too young and you can't hope to measure up. Either way, yeah, you're damned if you do and don't. So yeah, I think I'm probably gonna wrap this up because this has been on for about 2.5 hours. Tom, really thanks for showing up. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun. People subscribe if you're not subscribed. I'm about to hit 4,000 people. I want to get over the hump. More people, the more things we can do, the more people we can get.
Is 4,000 one of the humps? I'm not over 500. Is 4,000 one of the humps? I'm not.
It's a hump, right? Everyone's a hump, but 4,000 has like 3 zeros, so it's more significant. But also I'm trying to get push Patreon a little more. Even if you're just $1 patron, it helps me. And the idea is that when we get, I'm one of these people that if I can get enough sort of revenue or generate enough sort of like money, I'm willing to just like dumping it, like, okay, well, I got X number of dollars from Patreon, let's do something fun. Let's like, well, how much does it cost to get like Matt Dillahunty to come on or something like that, or at least make offers, because a lot of these people can be persuaded with money, right? Who wouldn't be like, oh, you want like $300 to come talk to us for an hour or something about that? I mean, like those things all seem fun, and I want to do fun things, right? But in order to do that, I have to have a little bit more in the war chest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for showing up. I'll change my description of the video. Somebody said I should probably break it up, but since you kind of rolled into the last part of that, I'll just keep this the same. It's going to be 2.5 hours. I think that's like Pine Creek length. So his has been getting longer. But yeah, other than that, what I will do, since I'm not going to open this up live, I'm just going to wrap this one up here. But what I'm going to do right now is post the link to, I don't have my own Discord server. I used to have one, but what I do have is the invite to Discord server. It's called Rascal's Castle. He has opened up a channel for me. It's called The Disputation of Jefferson Spatchcock. So if you click on that, if anybody wants to join me there, I'm going to jump in there for a little bit. I'll probably be in there for the next 30 minutes or so. If anybody wants to ask me questions, that way it's off air. Nobody has to worry about feeling awkward about jumping in while it's a live broadcast. So I will be there. Tom, you're welcome to join too, but if you got other things going on, I get it.
Yeah, I'm a member of that server, actually. I see it. So I might.
Yeah. I don't see you on too often live, but yeah, I do. Yeah, I know you're in the list. So, cool. And I found out too the video that I did where it was Vec's conversation. Vec is actually, I think, was one of the first mods for that particular channel. He's the Australian guy that chatted with him. I don't cross paths with him too much since he's like 12 hours ahead of us, 12 or 13 hours ahead of us. So, but yeah, hopefully we're going to do something together here at some point. For those of you who don't mess around with Discord, I guess don't worry about it. Thanks,
Maya put my Patreon link. Thank you very much. But let me just say one more thing, that the content that you guys see with regards to Darth, you got to keep in mind that I think of it as Darth content is like low grade ore. Okay, you have to go through tons and tons of ore. That's just him rambling and going on about, like, saying the same thing about Shannon Q Duck Lips, the stuff that you'd never want to hear, to just get that little nugget of a video. You got to understand, there's so much garbage. There is so much garbage, but I'm happy to do that for you guys. But I might stop by over there, and thanks you all. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you next time.
Yep, thanks. And I do want to give an apology to my brother Jay, has been listening in. He's been using this to listen to him. I didn't bring him in. I was only going to bring in Tom, but also November Adam had jumped into the background. I don't know if you're still listening, Adam, but I would have brought you in too, but I wasn't planning on having any live guests on. But since Tom came in, it's his video that I was reviewing. I've been poaching his stuff for a little while now.
No, that's not poaching. Come on. Just anyone's free to do whatever they want. I don't care about all that stuff. Don't even say that.
I know you don't, but still, so yeah, but no, this made it fun. But anyway, Adam, I'm always happy to have you on. Sorry I didn't bring you on this time, but I wanted to keep it down to just, it wasn't gonna be like a hangout thing. But anyway, I'll wrap this up. Thanks again, Tom. Thanks again, everybody, especially Maya, for posting that Patreon link. I will adjust the description to put in the link to the original video that I was reviewing here initially. That's in the description, but I'll put in Tom's. Try to put in your Patreon link and you want your Discord link in there as well, or would you rather not?
No, that's fine. It's fine.
Because those usually time out, don't they? After like half an hour if you post them.
I don't know. It depends on which one you get, but okay. Cool. We'll wrap it up there then. Everyone have a great day. See ya. Bye.
Yep. Take it easy, everybody.